The brilliant morning sun streams through the large window, bathing the luxurious room in light and marking the beginning of a peaceful new day. On the banquet table, exquisite dishes are beautifully arranged, ready for a special occasion. The maid smiles, her gentle voice echoing as she offers her congratulations to Isaac. Carefully carrying the food tray, the maid shares that she has prepared all of Isaac's favorite dishes to celebrate this joyous day. Isaac, at only 10 years old, smiles radiantly and reaches out as if to present a gift. Isaac hands the gift to Jonas's father, leaving him surprised and flustered by the young master's thoughtfulness. Jonas's father cannot refuse such a sincere gesture. Jonas's father emotionally recalls the time when his son fell ill, remembering how it was Isaac who brought the medicine that saved the boy's life. Isaac modestly replies, happily accepting a gift from Jonas's father in return. The two exchange gifts in a warm atmosphere just as an excited voice rings out. Jonas appears with his instrument, eager to play a tune to join in the celebration with everyone. Jonas stands firm, clutching his instrument, ready to strike up some joyful melodies. Jonas's father proudly praises his son's innate talent in front of Isaac. Isaac smiles kindly, he, too, is eager to listen to Jonas's performance. Jonas nods in agreement, his face filled with excitement. Jonas begins the first notes, and the space fills with melodious music. Unexpectedly, the music shifts into sounds of painful screams, and the surrounding air turns gloomy and heavy. Isaac wakes up with a start, sweat dripping down his forehead, his breath coming in short gasps. Isaac sits up in bed, struck by the realization that it was all just a dream. Isaac gives a bitter laugh, mocking his own foolishness from the past. Isaac understands that those peaceful days belong to a past that can never return. Steady footsteps echo through the quiet corridor. The door to the room slowly opens, shattering the silence. Isaac's servant enters with a tray of food, offering a gentle good morning greeting. Isaac's servant looks slightly surprised at his master's pale complexion. Isaac's servant asks with concern whether Isaac has just had a nightmare. Isaac puts his hand to his forehead, admitting to his servant that he had just dreamt of the past. Isaac's servant advises Isaac to cast aside old memories and enjoy his breakfast. Isaac's servant reminds Isaac about the sword training session left unfinished from yesterday. Isaac's servant wishes Isaac a good meal while Isaac sinks into deep thought about the events of 20 years later. A severe illness dragged on for 3 long months. With Isaac's health showing no signs of improvement, his father, a man of high rank, was forced to summon a scholar from the magic tower. The scholar looks at Isaac with a scrutinizing gaze, questioning the boy's unique constitution. Every living being possesses an innate mana vessel, and mana circulates at a speed corresponding to the size of that vessel. However, the circulation of mana in Isaac is completely abnormal. It moves at a terrifying and violent speed beyond comprehension. Isaac's mana vessel will shatter. The truth that Isaac had tried to ignore has finally become reality. The mana inside Isaac's body erupts violently like a burst dam, colliding head-on with the mana outside. The result is a catastrophic mana explosion. The room shakes, and everything around Isaac is blown away by the overwhelming pressure of the mana. Isaac's hands were stained with blood, the direct aftermath of an uncontrollable magical explosion. On the floor, debris and scattered bloodstains bore witness to the horrific destruction that had just occurred. When that same surge of magic tore off his younger brother's right hand, Isaac completely broke down. In utter despair, Isaac begged his father to lock him away. As tears streamed down his face, Isaac accepted his fate of being imprisoned in the darkness. A place where Isaac could hide, a place unreachable by anyone, and a place where no one else would have to be hurt by him again. Isaac was alone in the dark room, with only the tally marks on the wall to keep him company. Isaac wondered if he had even turned 15 yet. A sudden fit of coughing seized him, causing Isaac to stiffen in agony. His attendant approached, looking visibly anxious about his master's condition. Fresh blood poured from Isaac's mouth, staining his hands. The attendant realized in a panic that these were symptoms of mana poisoning, the consequence of staying by Isaac's side for too long. Coldly, Isaac reminded his attendant that he didn't need to stay there for so long and that he should go get some rest. The attendant gave a faint smile, asking who would take care of Isaac if he left, while pointedly remarking that Isaac didn't have a single friend. Isaac maintained a calm demeanor, reassuring his attendant through the bond they shared. The attendant proudly boasted that even though Isaac had caused dozens of explosions, he hadn't lost a single hair. The attendant affirmed that Isaac would never find anyone else like him. Isaac responded with a cold warning that a single mistake could cost him everything. Without letting the attendant react, Isaac ordered him to leave so he could focus on his meditation. The attendant smiled and complied, closing their cryptic conversation. The heavy prison door slammed shut, cutting off all contact with the outside world. Amidst the deep darkness, an ironic congratulation echoed, directed straight at Isaac. Isaac sat there, his expression as cold as if he were facing an indelible, horrifying memory. The blood-soaked banquet of years past returned like a nightmare, where dark shadows engulfed the space. Isaac's eyes snapped open, the voices of the past still echoed in his mind. Isaac stared directly at the person standing on the banquet table, the place that had been the starting point for every tragedy. That person wore a haunting smile, the blood on his face serving as a reminder of his cruelty. Nightmare suffocated Isaac, making it impossible for him to breathe amidst the harsh reality. Isaac jolted awake, cold sweat drenching his pale, panic-stricken face. It had been over a year since that day, the incident that followed the long streaks of blood left on the floor. Since then, Isaac had locked himself behind the door, completely isolated from the outside world. As time passed, the tally marks on the wall became proof of Isaac's long, enduring loneliness. Isaac regretted it. If only he had kept his distance back then, things wouldn't have come to this. Warmth only brought pain. Isaac told himself he should have been colder than that. If Isaac had done so, perhaps his loved ones would not have faced such a tragic end. But Isaac was still alive, and now he had to face this harsh reality. With no way back, Isaac was determined to look ahead to find a way out for himself. Isaac chewed on a piece of dry bread, his eyes reflecting the exhaustion of a man all too familiar with solitude. Time has passed, and Isaac is now an old man, yet the tally marks on the wall still fail to count the endless days of his imprisonment. Throughout 30 years underground, Isaac buried himself in magic, seeking a way to break his unique condition until there wasn't a single book left that could teach him anything more. When knowledge ran dry, only intuition and an infinite well of inspiration guided Isaac through the silence. A whisper echoed like destiny, "O traveler who begins the journey." Could Isaac stand firm against the infinity of his solitary world, a place where only magic and his own self existed? As the years dragged on, Isaac finally found a clue to surpass his own limits. A faint noise resonated in the dark room. The piece of bread was placed on the wooden tray, marking the end of his meager meal. Isaac wondered to himself if the family was having trouble, seeing as how research documents kept being sent his way. Bright magic stones were placed beside the magic circle on the table, and Isaac shifted slightly. Isaac narrowed his eyes, his gaze piercing through the darkness. 71 years old already, huh? Isaac wondered while looking at the tally marks etched into the wall. Footsteps echoed as a pair of boots approached the cell door. Illard stopped in front of the door, shadows obscuring half of his face. Isaac looked up, recognizing his uninvited guest. Illard spoke up. Illard looked at Isaac and asked if he was asleep. Isaac slowly stood up and asked why Illard had come to see him at this hour. Illard hesitated, softly asking if he could be allowed inside. Isaac clenched his fist and replied in a cold tone, "Just say it from there." Illard sat down on the floor outside the cell door. Isaac asked about how Illard was doing, but only received the reply that it was a long story. Illard sighed, mentioning that today was the anniversary of their father's death. Isaac looked straight at Illard and asked about the cause of their father's death. Illard replied that it was a long story, then asked if Isaac wanted to hear it. Isaac gave a faint, bitter laugh and said, "Then start from what happened 30 years ago." Illard began to recount the secrets that had been buried in the darkness for decades. Isaac listened intently, his aged face revealing deep contemplation at the truths being revealed. Memories of peaceful days seemed to have faded away, leaving Isaac to face his harsh reality. In the dim corner of the cell, Illard spoke, his voice dropping into a thoughtful tone. "I must admit one thing, Isaac, you have a talent for storytelling." Isaac smiled faintly in reply, his voice tinged with bitterness. "Huh, is that so? If I had known, perhaps I would have chosen the life of a wandering poet." Isaac's eyes revealed deep sadness, although, with only one arm like this, that path wouldn't have been easy either. Illard could only fall silent, uttering a belated apology into the still air. Isaac's hands gripped each other tightly, his knuckles standing out, trembling from suppressed emotions. Illard gritted his teeth, the hatred from the past flaring up. "How much we hated you, Isaac." Illard hesitated, his breathing becoming heavy, and then Illard's gaze turned toward Isaac, where old memories rushed back like a wound that never truly healed. Illard choked back tears, his voice trembling. "Honestly, we loved Isaac very much." Illard coughed violently, his breath fading. "What a shame. For this final time, I just wanted to see Isaac's face." Isaac is stunned. "The last time? What exactly happened when that war broke out? Did a gate open?" Illard struggles to stand, recounting the nightmares, monsters never seen before, fanatic factions of a new religion, the atrocities they committed. Illard looks at Isaac anxiously. "Isaac, are you okay? I just wanted you to live the rest of your days in peace." Illard's gaze blurs. "Just a little longer. I should have arrived sooner." Blood spills across the stone floor as heavy footsteps echo in the darkness. The door swings open. Illard finds Isaac collapsed, his breath ragged and fading. A sword is driven deep into Isaac's chest, his shirt soaked in red. Illard freezes, watching Isaac's silhouette slowly fade away. Illard trembles, his voice choking in his throat. Illard says bitterly, "And yet, Isaac still tried to keep talking all this time." Illard lifts Isaac's body. "Let's go, Isaac, you cannot stay lying here forever." Heavy footsteps drag across the ground, every movement heavy with agony. Illard carries Isaac up the stairs, leading them out of this living hell. Illard cries out in pain. Why? Illard holds Isaac tightly, feeling his frail frame. Why is Isaac so light? How much hunger and thirst have you had to endure? Brilliant light awaits them at the exit ahead, like a final escape. Illard's heavy breathing echoes, clouds of cold air escaping into the atmosphere. Darkness envelopes everything, leaving only the sound of hurried footsteps. Illard rushes toward the light with Isaac, the final spark of hope not yet extinguished. Amidst the ruins of a collapsed kingdom, Illard stumbles forward with a weary body, his final hope slowly fading in his arms. The carcass of a giant beast lies motionless beside the shattered gate, a testament to the life and death battle that just occurred. Illard whispers softly, "The snow has started to fall, Isaac." Illard's face is etched with the lines of sorrow. He chokes out that the winter ground has frozen too hard. He cannot bury Isaac right now. He must wait until spring, when the green grass sprouts, to bring Isaac back to the family graveyard. A small snowflake lands on his worn cloak, as cold and lonely as Illard's soul after losing everything. Looking up at the gaunt, withered branches under the gray sky, Illard promises himself that once this wish is fulfilled, he will also find a place to rest. Time passes silently, the withered branches begin to stir as winter gradually fades away. A sprout of vibrant green emerges from the old branch, and at that same moment, a delicate white butterfly flutters by, signaling the rebirth of life. The butterfly gently lands on the hilt of the old sword stuck in the ground, where the warm spring sunlight blankets the lush green field. For the freshly mounded grave, Illard now looks much older with long, flowing white hair, standing silently amidst the space filled with faint green spiritual energy. Illard's withered hand clutches a shimmering blue crystal, the very thing he spent his entire life researching. Illard slowly opens his palm, preparing to activate an extraordinary power that has been nurtured for a long time. Suddenly, a fierce flame erupts from Illard's hand, its immense power shaking the space all around him. Looking up at the brilliant sky, Illard softly calls out Isaac's name with eyes full of pride mixed with deep, eternal regret. The fire blazes brighter than ever. Illard tells himself that although it is a bit late, he has finally achieved the impossible. The crystal in Illard's hand begins to crack, releasing a massive surge of energy. After years of grueling research, he has finally found a way to overcome that special condition. Strength finally exhausted, Illard collapses onto the grass. He wheezes, wondering if he can finally find rest now. Under the sudden spring rain, Illard lies curled up beside the grave. With his dying breath, he begs for forgiveness for the mistakes of the past. Memories of the ruined castle and the scattered corpses flash back. Illard regrets that if he had been just a little faster, if he hadn't wallowed in despair for so long, perhaps things would have been different. A panoramic view of the ruined kingdom appears under the pale sunlight, a sorrowful remnant of a golden age lost forever. Illard's face suddenly turns strangely serene, and tiny particles of light begin to cover his body like a final release. Illard's silhouette gradually fades into nothingness, leaving behind a silent void amidst the lush green meadow. In the dim darkness, a familiar voice calls out Isaac's name, causing everything around to begin trembling. Isaac's bright blue eyes suddenly snap open, reflecting the light from the distant window frame. Isaac jolts up in bed, drenched in sweat and breathing heavily as if he had just returned from the dead. The young master looks at Isaac with concern, noticing he is soaked in cold sweat with a bewildered expression. The young master steps toward the bed, gently asking if Isaac has just had a nightmare. Isaac looks around, unable to believe his eyes. He wonders if this is a dream, or if these are the scenes of his life flashing before him before he truly passes on. The young master panics and rushes toward the window upon seeing Isaac's strange behavior. Isaac stands by the window, his gaze looking out into the distance. The young master hurriedly tries to stop him, shouting that it is dangerous and telling Isaac to come down at once. Isaac's eyes harden, he firmly asserts that he is fine, despite everyone's worry. Isaac lets out a soft gasp of surprise as his vision is obscured by lush green foliage. Standing on a high tree branch, Isaac happily holds the toy up high, calling out to Isaac's loved one. Isaac looks down from the window frame, his eyes clearly showing shock as he calls out to Isaac's loved one. From below, the young master shouts, demanding that Isaac climb down immediately because it is too dangerous. Isaac presses his palm against the window glass, his face flickering with confusion at the strange sounds outside. Isaac mutters in disbelief, wondering if everything happening is just a dream. As light pours through the window frame, Isaac is stunned to realize he has truly returned to the past. Standing silently by the frame, Isaac seems to be facing a whisper from the void about the lonely journey ahead. A world isolated, containing only magic power and the existence of Isaac, appears before his eyes, challenging Isaac to stand firm against the infinite. The narrator's voice echoes, urging Isaac to cast aside all thoughts and viewpoints that have been deeply ingrained in his life. Isaac feels a surge of power enveloping his body, urging Isaac to break the shackles of the past. The brilliant aura, Isaac gradually changes, walking on a path to rediscover his true self. Isaac's gaze becomes more determined than ever. Isaac is ready for a powerful new beginning. The room is cluttered with shards, remnants of an uncontrollable rage that just swept through here. The maids whisper in fear, anxious about when Isaac's next magical surge will break out again. Hans stands quietly outside the door, listening to the rumors about Isaac's increasingly volatile temperament. Unable to remain calm amidst the gossip, Hans decides to enter and face the truth. Isaac stops Hans with a decisive gesture. Isaac knows exactly what Hans intends to do. Isaac calmly admits that the rumors out there are entirely true. Isaac turns back to look at Hans with cold, resolute blue eyes. Isaac demands that Hans stop approaching, as Isaac's mere presence only brings disaster to those around him. Isaac's gaze is heavy with pain, holding the horrific memories that Isaac must bear alone. Even so, Hans kneels down, firmly refusing to accept Isaac's rejection. Hans reaffirms his loyalty, emphasizing that he has always cared and worried for Isaac during this difficult time. Isaac falls silent. Hans's words of comfort touch the depths of Isaac's wounded soul. Hans smiles, a warm smile as if trying to dispel the cruelty of fate. Hans has always been this way, using his compassion to face this harsh world. The sight of Hans falling in a pool of blood still haunts Isaac every time Isaac closes his eyes. The cruel truth is clear. The kind hearts of those closest to him paid the price with their lives for Isaac's existence. The memories of a peaceful childhood seem like nothing more than a distant illusion in this tragic reality. Isaac wonders what he must do to change this deadly cycle. Looking at Hans through the glass door, Isaac feels the tearing conflict between the desire to be together and overwhelming fear. Hans still smiles in response, a promise never to abandon Isaac. Isaac can bear it no longer. He orders Hans to leave immediately. Isaac's voice is harsh, desperately trying to push Hans away from the danger zone Isaac creates. Isaac bites his lip, his heart tightening as he forces himself to say these bitter words. Hans can only lower his head silently, accepting Isaac's request with unspeakable pain. Isaac clenches his fists, telling himself that letting Hans go is the only way to protect him. The sound of Hans's footsteps echoes, heavily leaving the room, leaving Isaac in solitude. Before closing the door, Hans still tries to convey that Isaac does not have to carry everything alone. The door clicks shut, and Isaac stands there, submerged in the vast silence of the harsh reality. Isaac stares at his hands, the memory of the whisper in his dreams still lingering. Was it reality, or just an illusion born from Isaac's own desire? Sudden, sharp pain strikes, catching Isaac off guard. His body sways within the unstable surge of magic. Isaac winces, his breathing becoming labored. This pain feels far too real. It is no dream. Isaac collapses onto the cold floor, his mind in chaos. If he is living in the present, then how did that past death actually occur? Through the window, Isaac looks toward the garden, where shadows of the past still linger, hinting at a time long gone. Isaac tells himself whether it is a dream or reality, he must find a way to overcome this adversity. With a determined gaze, Isaac swears to himself that he will never let the tragedy of the magic outburst happen again. Memories come flooding back. Isaac recalls the days of old. There was once someone who possessed a special body just like Isaac, someone who had to endure the same torment. That person was a predecessor who reached a realm no human had ever set foot in before. Hans appears in Isaac's memories, the one who passed down the ancestral records to Isaac when Isaac was still imprisoned in the dark dungeon. It was through those very records that Isaac discovered the key to mastering his unique constitution. Isaac picked up the ancient rune stone, the pivotal item in his research. Through diligent study, Isaac created a unique pattern, carving it into a mana stone to transform it into a powerful rune stone. Feeling the dexterity of his hands, Isaac silently gave thanks for the opportunity to be young again and continue this path. To prevent the side effects of his unique constitution, Isaac understood that the mana vessel needed to be durable enough to withstand constant circulation. However, the mana within Isaac flowed so violently and intensely that no vessel could possibly contain it. An ordinary person would have been torn apart the moment the vessel shattered, but strangely enough, Isaac's body would recover as if nothing had ever happened. It is precisely this regenerative ability that allows mana to erupt dozens of times, creating an unimaginable catastrophe. Focusing intensely, Isaac used the rune stone to deliberately damage the mana channels within his body. By repeatedly striking those damaged points, Isaac forced the mana to find new paths. Thanks to this, a new path was opened, helping to disperse the volatility of the mana. Isaac pondered. The success rate of this method was too low, and he had only just managed to complete it before collapsing in his past life. The small flame on Isaac's hand was undeniable proof of the success of this research. Isaac held his breath, wondering if this method would work again this time around. The flame flared brilliantly in Isaac's palm, emitting an intense heat. Isaac was astonished to see the mana surging far beyond his expectations. Such overwhelming power was now within his grasp. Isaac's eyes widened in shock at the power that had just been unleashed. Isaac was startled by the terrifying, surging power. It seemed his body could no longer keep it under control. Mana erupted, enveloping Isaac like glowing blood vessels. Primitive power was awakening in his chest. Isaac's pupils constricted, his breath coming in short gasps as he felt the primal mana surging through his veins. In his palm, the mana stone emitted a brilliant blue light, shaking violently as if trying to escape Isaac's grip. A golden flame erupted from the tips of Isaac's fingers, scorching the surrounding space. A fierce blast of fire shot straight out from Isaac, tearing through the silent night. 3 streams of magic fired simultaneously. Isaac was amazed to see that his mana conduction pathways had tripled. Each spell had its own size and properties. Isaac could hardly believe his eyes that he could cast 3 spells at once. But Isaac suddenly froze, clenching his hand to extinguish the flame. This was not his ultimate goal. Isaac's goal was to completely eliminate the risk of mana explosion and prevent any potential catastrophe. 3 mana conduction pathways were still not enough. Isaac needed to push past his current limits. Isaac told himself he had to use magic more often and more consistently to expand these paths and reduce the burden on the mana vessel within his body. And until that moment, Isaac was forced to keep his distance from everyone. Isaac gripped the mana stone tightly, determined not to let anyone be harmed by his power. Night blanketed the ancient castle, where Isaac's secrets were slowly being buried. Hans entered, wearing his usual kind smile as he announced that it was time for Isaac's dinner. Hans set the tray down on the table, while Isaac coldly demanded that Hans leave. Hans remained unfazed, patiently inviting Isaac to try the barley bread he liked. Isaac felt annoyed by Hans's excessive concern and sweet tone. Isaac cut him off with a question about his age, and Hans calmly replied that he was only 12 years old. Isaac told himself that it was normal for a child of that age to behave that way. Isaac picked up his fork and brought the piece of bread to his mouth. As the familiar taste rushed back, Isaac realized this was the very bread his nanny used to make. Hans smiles with satisfaction as he sees Isaac finally eating his meal. Isaac asks about the nanny's absence, and Hans explains that her son is suffering from pneumonia. Isaac pauses, his eyes revealing a clear sense of concern. Isaac sets his spoon down on the table, asking again to confirm if she has truly returned home. Isaac speaks sarcastically about a nanny leaving her post just because of her child, noting how rare such devotion is in other families. Hans maintains a calm expression despite Isaac's veiled sarcasm. The fireplace continues to burn brightly, the crackling of the wood reflecting Isaac's troubled state of mind. Isaac falls silent, his gaze lost in deep contemplation. Isaac's fingers unconsciously tap against the tabletop, a hard-to-break habit whenever he is plotting something. Isaac seems immersed in troubled thoughts regarding a strange illness. He quietly asks about the mysterious pneumonia that is spreading. Hans stands there, silently confirming the grim reality that all the children in that village have been struck down by this cruel disease. Isaac suddenly snaps to his senses. Memories of a horrific event from the past come flooding back under the cold moonlight. It was the mass pneumonia tragedy at Black Goose Village, an indelible scar on Isaac's mind. That tragedy not only claimed the lives of the children but also left the nanny in unbearable agony after losing her only son. With her final, painful breath, she still tried to smile, sending a heart-wrenching message of comfort to Isaac. Isaac looks on in pain at the nanny's body lying amidst the ruins. He vows to himself that he will not let anyone go through this suffering ever again. Isaac's gaze becomes resolute. He knows exactly what the true cause behind the deadly pneumonia is. Meal on the table remains, but Isaac's mind is already fixed on a much more important clue. Isaac calls out to Hans, his eyes showing clear gravity as he needs to verify a crucial piece of information. Isaac hurriedly questions Hans about the monsters that have been eradicated recently, determined to uncover the source of the calamity. Under the veil of a silent night, dark secrets begin to stir in the stillness. Deep in the gloomy forest, a small creature moves about, completely unaware of the imminent danger. Suddenly, a surge of searing energy erupts, shattering the silence of the night. A fireball streaks forward, leaving the creature horrified as it realizes death is closing in. It scrambles away in desperation as the flames consume everything in their path. Isaac emerges from the shadows, murmuring in surprise as he observes the results of his work. Isaac stares at his hand, still tinged with residual magic, telling himself he had mistaken it for a wolf. Isaac ventures deeper into the forest, fully prepared for the journey ahead. A signpost appears in the middle of the old forest, confirming that the destination is Black Goose Village. In a private room, Isaac confronts Hinder, questioning him about the monster that has been hunting in this village. Hinder scratches his chin, admitting he didn't see it himself but had heard of people from the Magic Tower coming here to collect specimens. Memories flood back. Isaac recalls the stranger from years ago with a cart full of sharp crystal shards. The description of a giant spider with silver fur makes Hinder shudder as he ponders its true identity. An ancient page turns, revealing the grotesque appearance of the monster recorded within. Sitting on his bed, Isaac reads intently, analyzing that while winter spiders aren't inherently powerful, their reproductive rate is terrifyingly fast. Isaac's gaze turns icy. He realizes the core issue is the magical energy these monsters possess. Exposure to high concentrations of magic causes mana poisoning, a type of toxin that slowly suffocates its victims. Under the faint sunset, Isaac carefully gathers precious medicinal herbs in the forest. Isaac thinks to himself that it was the magic from the winter spiders that poisoned the children of Black Goose Village. With the basket full, this is the only hope to alleviate their agonizing pain. Isaac sighs, fully aware that knowledge of mana poisoning in this era is still too limited, leading people to mistake it for pneumonia. He looks back at his harvest, telling himself this amount of herbs is enough for now. Using them will help the children reduce their symptoms, albeit only temporarily. But Isaac knows clearly that to prevent the disease from recurring, he must completely eradicate the winter spiders. His father is still busy guarding the border fortress and cannot leave his post. And his mother is busy traveling across the continent, searching for a cure for his unique physical condition. If he just sits and waits, Isaac knows that Hinder's life will fall into grave danger once again. Night falls and the village is submerged in quiet moonlight, but Isaac knows he has no time to hesitate. Isaac quietly makes his way to a small, isolated house where silence shrouds the space. Inside, Nanny is sitting by the bedside where Hinder lies unconscious. The sound of a knock startles Nanny. Wariness is evident in her eyes. The door opens and Isaac appears from the shadows, leaving Nanny completely stunned. Recognizing Isaac, Nanny freezes, her breath hitching behind her mask. Ignoring her shock, Isaac speaks up to break the silence. "You look exhausted, Nanny." Flustered, Nanny steps forward, anxiously asking why Isaac has appeared in the middle of the night. Seeing the dirt on Isaac, Nanny cannot hide her surprise. Isaac remains silent, his gaze sharpening, harboring unspoken schemes. Isaac walks straight inside, explaining that he came because he hadn't seen Nanny at work for many days. Nanny tries to stop him, fearing that Isaac might catch the illness from Hinder. Isaac calmly covers his face with a mask and asks Nanny in return if she feels safer now. Without waiting for Nanny's agreement, Isaac hands her a bag of herbs and tells her to take care of Hinder. Isaac provides meticulous instructions on how to decoct the medicine, demanding that Nanny follow the process exactly to save Hinder. Isaac approaches the hospital bed, observing Hinder's condition in the dim light. Under the faint light, Isaac watches Hinder lying motionless, his breathing weak. The blue spots on Hinder's skin lead Isaac to immediately realize that these are symptoms of mana poisoning. Isaac gently shakes Hinder, trying to wake him up from his delirious state. Hinder's eyes slowly open, looking at Isaac with exhaustion. Hinder whispers Isaac's name and desperately begs him not to fire his mother. Hinder chokes up as he explains that it was because of his poor health that Nanny couldn't go to work. Isaac looks at Hinder with determination, firmly asserting that he will not fire Nanny. Isaac gently places his hand on Hinder's forehead, admitting that Nanny is the only one who has always cared for him. Isaac tells Hinder to focus on resting so he can recover soon. The clear blue sky appears, signaling a challenging new beginning. Isaac stands before the entrance of the abandoned mine, the very place he had been painstakingly searching for. Isaac double-checks his preparations, confirming his objective. Isaac prepares thoroughly, ready to step inside on his own. Before venturing deeper, Isaac remains vigilant about the mysterious disappearances that have occurred here. Isaac deduces that winter spiders prefer limestone caves, and this is highly likely their nest. To ensure his safety before heading into the cave, Isaac begins preparing a few things. Isaac focuses his mana, and sparks of light begin to gather in his hands. By opening up new mana circuits, Isaac can now cast 3 spells simultaneously, achieving power equivalent to a second circle mage. However, Isaac understands his own limitations well. If he pushes himself too hard, the mana vessel within Isaac could shatter. Not knowing how many winter spiders are inside, Isaac cannot afford to waste mana recklessly. That is exactly why Isaac needs this. The frost belladonna plant is right before Isaac's eyes. Isaac carefully inspects it. This fruit is typically used as an anesthetic, but for the winter spiders it is a lethal poison. It is quite ironic that this creature lives in the very place where its natural predator grows. Under the bright sunlight, Isaac harvests the poisonous branches. Isaac sighs with relief once he has collected enough ingredients. Looking at the wounds on his hands, Isaac thinks to himself that he should have brought protective gloves given their high toxicity. After finishing his preparations, Isaac takes the pre-crafted ancient runestones and begins to head inside. Isaac steps into the cave where darkness envelopes the passage. The sound of Isaac's footsteps echoes through the silent space. Isaac moves cautiously, his magical light illuminating every corner. Isaac tells himself he cannot afford to die here. A meaningless death is unacceptable. Isaac realizes the path leads deeper down, but he wonders how to descend. An old rope ladder appears before Isaac's eyes. The ladder hangs precariously and looks completely rotten. Isaac couldn't help but worry, would it be able to hold his weight? With no other choice, Isaac tightened his grip on the rope. Isaac began to climb down the rope ladder into the darkness. Isaac's feet touched the ground, he had made it down safely. Isaac let out a sigh of relief after overcoming this small challenge. Isaac's gaze turned cold and sharp, focused on observing his surroundings. It seemed that Isaac had found the place he was looking for. Before Isaac lay piles of bones, all of them completely drained of their bodily fluids. Amidst the darkness, a blinding flash of light suddenly erupted, illuminating the human remains scattered everywhere. Kneeling amidst the ruins, Isaac carefully picked up a collarbone to examine it closely. Isaac's eyes revealed deep anxiety as he wondered if these were the traces of the missing people. Suddenly, Isaac was startled by the presence of an enemy as a strange noise echoed in the shadows. Isaac became instantly alert, his sharp gaze sweeping across the cave where the creatures were hiding. Isaac swallowed hard, quickly reaching forward to channel his energy in preparation for the approaching threat. Flames erupted fiercely from Isaac's hands, forming a brilliant shield of light that dispelled the surrounding darkness. From a dark corner, a monstrous creature lunged out, facing the blazing fire on Isaac's hands head-on. Isaac unleashed a fireball, knowing that these creatures feared fire and that it was the best way to keep them at bay. Isaac didn't let his guard down, he knew he needed to be better prepared before the monsters swarmed to surround him. Isaac focused intensely on the task ahead. Inside Isaac's pouch were precious herbs, the decisive weapon for this battle. Isaac knelt on the cold ground and began to perform the preparation ritual with great care. Isaac's gaze turned cold, fixed intently on his target. Isaac's fingers lightly touched the pouch of herbs, triggering the hidden power within. Flames flared up, consuming the leaves and releasing a strange smoke that spread throughout the cave. The bizarre blue smoke began to creep through the air, carrying unpredictable effects. Isaac knelt motionless, allowing the smoke to shroud the area around the pile of dry bones. The blue smoke touched the bodies of the monsters, causing them to react violently. The monsters roared in agony, their bodies convulsing repeatedly under the influence of the toxic smoke. Isaac stood up, watching the disoriented monsters as he began the true hunt. With eyes full of killing intent, Isaac lunged forward, determined to end everything right here. In the silent library, rows of old books rest on the shelves as if holding a myriad of forgotten secrets. Isaac sits alone in the middle of the vast room, surrounded by piles of documents stacked high like mountains. The light streaming through the large window creates an intense, high-pressure workspace. Isaac's hand stops moving across the paper as the interrogator speaks sharply. "What on earth did you do to make everything turn out this badly?" Isaac glances slightly through the window, where the interrogator is staring at him with eyes full of resentment. The interrogator warns him about his presence, but is immediately met with a cold, indignant dismissal from Isaac. Interrogator steps forward, face twisted in anger, questioning why Isaac failed to protect his own people. Isaac's silence only adds fuel to the fire, causing the interrogator to scream for answers as to why he abandoned Black Goose Village. Faced with the interrogator's loud shouting, Isaac merely murmurs in boredom, seemingly indifferent to the provocation. Isaac calmly thinks that perhaps he should have the windows sealed to avoid the nuisance caused by the interrogator. Isaac contemplates whether he should move down to the basement entirely to seek some peace and quiet. That would be the perfect place for Isaac to focus on studying his own unique physiology without being disturbed by anyone. Isaac decides to reinforce the walls with tritium, a mineral with extremely high magic resistance properties to prevent any mana-related risks. Isaac softly wonders about his own plans in the midst of his solitude. The room sinks into silence, with only the sound of Isaac focusing on his own private plans remaining. Isaac's gaze becomes deep, as if he is seeing right through the current troubles. Isaac reassures himself, reminding himself of the important plans that are still underway. The sound of a quill gliding across paper echoes steadily in the room as Isaac continues to toil away at his work. Sharp strokes appear on the page, recording the important plans that Isaac is executing. Isaac is highly focused, completely cut off from the noise outside the window. Isaac's hand does not stop writing, each line of text appearing to hold deep, hidden schemes. Isaac's eyes light up with determination. He has found his own path. Every movement of Isaac is decisive, his concentration reaching its peak with every stroke of the pen. Isaac sits there, solitary yet full of authority, completely in command of his workspace. Isaac is kneeling beside a fire pit, quietly watching the white smoke weaving into the air. A hint of concern crosses Isaac's gaze, wondering why old memories keep resurfacing. Isaac's focus is entirely on the winter spiders that are gradually being subdued. The toxic smoke from the frost belladonna is taking effect, causing the giant spiders to lose their orientation and collapse. Isaac knows full well that he doesn't need to feed them poison. By simply burning this, the smoke will paralyze and slowly suffocate them. To avoid inhaling the toxic gas from the labyrinth, Isaac has carefully used a wet cloth to cover his face as a primitive filter. Not stopping there, Isaac utilizes the mana within his body to completely cleanse any remaining toxins. At the same time, Isaac creates a fireball, compresses it, and activates phase shift to be ready for any unexpected situations. Cleansing process goes smoothly, helping Isaac maintain the necessary alertness in an environment filled with danger. Isaac seamlessly combines cleansing magic and fire magic while overlaying phase shift onto the burning fireballs. Thanks to unlocking 3 mana circuits simultaneously, Isaac can now cast multiple spells at once, helping him hold out until the spiders weaken. Isaac flicks his finger, sending a cold farewell to the opponent before him. The flames erupt violently, sweeping across the space and incinerating everything in their path. Isaac walks through a sea of fire. The magic flames are not just a weapon but also a shield protecting him from the monsters. Isaac's gaze is sharp and cold, focused intensely on the strange movements ahead. Isaac discovers something unusual. The spiders seem to be fleeing in the same direction all at once. Isaac senses moisture emanating from afar, signaling the presence of a water source. Each of Isaac's footsteps echoes through the cave as he ventures deeper into this new territory. The heat from the magic still lingers, making the surrounding air stiflingly oppressive. Isaac tells himself that while burning the spiders was effective, he himself is gradually suffocating from the smoke and intense heat. Isaac is forced to pick up the pace. He cannot afford to collapse in this place. Cold stalactites begin to appear, signaling a sudden shift in the environment. Isaac enters a water-filled cavern where the temperature drops so low that everything begins to freeze. The bone-chilling cold makes Isaac shiver. He regrets discarding his coat earlier. Isaac never expected the temperature here to drop low enough to form ice. Isaac's gaze freezes as he spots strange objects clinging to the cave walls. Before Isaac's eyes lies a series of giant eggs hanging suspended, creating a terrifying sight. The sheer number of eggs makes Isaac shudder. An ominous premonition flashes through his mind. A jarring sound erupts, making Isaac realize with horror that danger is imminent. Heavy, rapid thuds echo from the distance, shaking the entire cavern. Isaac is on high alert, his eyes scanning rapidly to pinpoint the source of the noise. Amidst the silent and icy expanse, Isaac stands his ground, facing the hidden threat. Without hesitation, Isaac immediately activates fire magic in his palm, ready for battle. Isaac launches a probing attack toward the darkness, the brilliant fire tearing through the space. Fireball plunges into the night, illuminating a corner of the cave and revealing horrifying secrets. Isaac stands frozen in the icy cave, his sharp blue eyes wide with vigilance against the encroaching peril. Cold sweat trickles down his temple. Isaac feels the terrifying pressure weighing down on the surrounding space. A massive tremor leaves Isaac stunned. A warrior's instinct tells him that something colossal has just emerged. Isaac instantly leaps to dodge, a surge of fiery magic blazing in his palm. He rolls across the ice as the monster's ferocious roar echoes throughout the cavern. Isaac grinds his teeth in anger. His intuition has never been wrong. Before Isaac stands a terrifying creature rising from the shadows of the cave. Unlike ordinary beasts, this opponent possesses fire resistance and a deadly freezing breath. Sharp limbs lunge down to strike, and Isaac barely manages to dodge just in the nick of time. Isaac does not hesitate. He unleashes a fireball technique directly at his enemy. The flames explode violently upon impact, but they seem to cause no significant damage to the enemy's sturdy icy armor. Isaac quietly assesses that his current fireballs aren't enough to incinerate the beast. Fortunately, the opponent's movements are rather sluggish, creating an opening for Isaac to find a way to approach. A wave of dizziness strikes. Isaac feels his body finally reaching its limit. Despite his great potential, it is difficult for Isaac to avoid exhaustion after a long day of using magic. The monster's heavy footsteps shake the entire cavern, exerting immense pressure on Isaac. Isaac tries to steady himself as his mind suddenly drifts back to old memories. He recalls the taste of wheat bread that an acquaintance once shared with him. That was the warm flavor that Isaac has always cherished. In this harsh northern land, finding soft wheat bread is a luxury. It was all thanks to the attentive care his nanny bestowed upon him. She didn't mind traveling for weeks to a distant city just to buy premium wheat for Isaac. A faint smile touched his lips as Isaac regained his usual confidence. He decided he would ask her to bake plenty of bread when he returned from this battle. Isaac gripped his weapon tightly, his gaze becoming more determined than ever. Even though it was a formidable foe, Isaac knew it was just another obstacle he had to overcome. Without giving the opponent a chance to react, Isaac swung his weapon down with terrifying speed. Solid chunks of ice began to crack under the immense pressure. Isaac channeled all his strength, delivering a direct strike into the interrogator's reinforced ice armor. Shards of ice flew in all directions as Isaac's weapon tore through the interrogator's defenses. Not giving the interrogator a chance to catch their breath, Isaac quickly closed the distance amidst the icy mist. Isaac's eyes revealed deep focus, determined to take down the interrogator right before him. Isaac poured his strength into his weapon, launching a critical strike at the interrogator's weak point. The blow cut through the air, and the powerful clash between Isaac and the interrogator sparked intense electric bolts. Isaac pivoted, using the momentum of his attack to follow up with a lethal strike against the interrogator. The interrogator was pushed back, and Isaac seized the opportunity to pursue relentlessly. Isaac's hand tightened around his weapon, preparing for the finishing blow on the interrogator. A terrifying collision occurred between Isaac and the interrogator, the roar echoing throughout the labyrinth. Isaac braced himself against the shockwave from the interrogator's counterattack, refusing to be brought down. Isaac realized that long range wasn't an advantage when the interrogator possessed extremely high fire resistance. Deciding to change his tactics, Isaac began concentrating flames into his palm to confront the interrogator. The flames in Isaac's hand were no longer mere fireballs, they were being compressed into an extremely high density. Isaac roared, forcing the flames to condense even further to maximize his destructive power against the interrogator. As power erupted, Isaac funneled his entire focus into this decisive blow. Without a hint of hesitation, Isaac unleashed a blazing palm strike straight at the interrogator. A blinding light engulfed the interrogator, signaling the end of the battle. Isaac gasped for air, his eyes never leaving the interrogator as it was consumed by flames. A burst of blue magical energy erupts, wiping out the monsters in the abandoned mine. Isaac is exhausted, his arm paralyzed by the magical backlash, struggling to break free from the surge of energy. Isaac's hand trembles, remnants of the magic still cling tightly to his skin. Isaac sighs in relief as he finally breaks free, his body collapsing onto the cold ground. Corpses of the monsters lie scattered in a pool of blood, a testament to the fierce battle that just took place. Isaac lies motionless in the middle of the cave, darkness gradually consuming his consciousness. In his daze, Isaac can still feel the lingering magical energy fading into the void. A tiny magic crystal falls, reflecting the faint light within the cave. The magic crystal glimmers, containing the primal power of this place. Isaac wakes up in the darkness, the feeling of dizziness still weighing heavily on him. Nanny's whispers echo from afar, she is conversing with a man. The man, named Thomas, asks anxiously about the young master's whereabouts, unaware that Isaac is eavesdropping. Nanny sighs and recounts how Isaac had gone to the abandoned mine under the guidance of a local hunter. Isaac recalls the moment he defeated the Snow Spider Queen and passed out after hitting his head on the ground. Fortunately, Isaac had regained consciousness and dragged his battered body back to the village. Upon reaching the village gates, Isaac ran into Thomas, who was waiting for him. Thomas panics and catches Isaac as his body collapses, filled with immense worry. Nanny assures Thomas that by following Isaac's instructions, he has been completely healed. Thomas smiles with emotion. Even though Isaac has become sensitive since the mana explosion, his kindness remains unchanged. Isaac blushes while lying in bed, feeling embarrassed by Thomas's praise. Thomas and Nanny both turn around as they realize Isaac has truly woken up. Isaac asks how long he has been asleep. Thomas replies it has been half a day and kindly asks about his health. Nanny cannot suppress her emotions, she is deeply worried about Isaac's recklessness. Nanny presses him, asking why he would venture into such a dangerous place alone. Isaac fumbles for an excuse, lying that he just accidentally fell while out gathering herbs. Thomas asks about Isaac's recovery, and Nanny confirms he is better thanks to the herbs. Isaac thinks to himself that he must keep the mana poisoning a secret to avoid trouble. Isaac knows that if his superiors discover the spider carcasses, things will become extremely complicated. Nanny curiously probes Isaac about the source of his extensive herbal knowledge, something even the doctor sent by his master knew nothing about. Isaac quickly changes the subject, urging Thomas to leave immediately as it is snowing outside. Isaac warns Thomas of the severe consequences if it is discovered that he snuck out of the mansion. Nanny suddenly appears, bringing a basket full of apples as a gift for Isaac. This is a gift from the villagers, an expression of their sincere gratitude toward Isaac. Isaac quietly accepts the apple, his eyes reflecting a hint of contemplation. Nanny suggests that Isaac should rest for another week to ensure a full recovery before returning to work. Nanny worries that Thomas won't let it slide if he sees Isaac being idle for too long. Isaac replies with a cryptic question, causing Nanny to freeze in her tracks. Not giving Nanny a chance to react, Isaac holds up the apple and orders her to make jam out of them. Nanny is surprised by the request for apple jam, and Isaac explains that it is to eat with barley bread when he returns to work. Isaac's words touch Nanny's heart, leaving her deeply moved. Nanny's eyes welled up with tears, deeply touched by Isaac's sincere concern. Isaac gave a gentle smile and suggested adding apple pie to the menu to spice things up. Nanny happily agreed to Isaac's proposal. Outside, night fell, enveloping the mansion in the bitter chill of winter. The brilliant sunlight emerged, signaling the start of a new day. Isaac was diligently jogging around the mansion's grounds to train his body. His breathing grew heavy, and sweat began to roll down Isaac's forehead. A week had passed since that day, and Isaac had not ceased his efforts for a moment. Throughout this time, Isaac's body had undergone incredible changes, especially regarding his mana vessel. The system recorded that his mana circuits had increased by 1, bringing the total to 4. His mana vessel became more stable, allowing Isaac to cast 4 spells simultaneously. Isaac realized that battling the winter spiders and pushing past his limits had contributed significantly to this progress. Using magic requires understanding, calculation, and sharp intuition, while also draining a great deal of mental energy. Isaac understood that when the body collapses, the spirit follows, as mana always requires a solid physical foundation. That is why Isaac quickly hit his limit at the abandoned mine. His current body was still too frail and lacked proper conditioning. Isaac recalled his past life when his old comrades would frequently help him train his physical strength. Smiles of his comrades flashed back into Isaac's memory. Isaac clenched his fists, determined to turn those old lessons into the strength needed to overcome his current limits. Thomas bowed and addressed Isaac with the utmost respect. Thomas approached alongside a doctor, announcing that it was time for Isaac's routine health checkup. Isaac glanced over, noticing the arrival of Thomas and his personal physician. Thomas bowed respectfully, inquiring about Isaac's health for the day. The most skilled doctor in the region had been sent by Sung Jinwoo's father, but to Isaac he could never truly understand his unique constitution. After the examination, the doctor appeared satisfied, noting that Isaac looked healthier than ever. He decided to change Isaac's prescription, a hasty conclusion that left Isaac less than pleased. The doctor carefully opened his leather bag, preparing to take out the precious vials of medicine. Inside were vials of panacea, a miraculous drug said to be capable of stabilizing the flow of mana. Isaac held the vial in his hand, quietly reflecting on the excessive attentiveness of Sung Jinwoo's father. Panacea was originally considered a cure-all, often used to stimulate and enhance the performance of soldiers. But in reality, translating panacea as a mana stabilizer was merely a disastrous misunderstanding of the ancient language. Its true function was to accelerate mana flow, a deadly poison for someone with unstable mana like Isaac. Dangerous as it was, in his current situation, Isaac saw it as the perfect catalyst to expand his mana circuits. Doctor left after completing his task, leaving Isaac to his thoughts. Thomas stayed behind, his gaze fixed on Isaac with a look of deep suspicion. Thomas spoke up, having noticed Isaac's unusually calm demeanor today. Thomas was puzzled because, normally, Isaac would react aggressively whenever he was being watched. That very attitude was the reason every other doctor in the region had refused to serve as Isaac's personal physician. Isaac smiled in response, asking Thomas back if he should have made a scene instead. Thomas just silently watched Isaac through his glasses, not saying a word. Thomas's eyes revealed a stern look, as if he were hiding something. Thomas unexpectedly mentions that Isaac has cured the children of Black Goose Village of pneumonia. Isaac is stunned to realize that Thomas has been kept informed of everything through Hans. Thomas warns that if this matter gets out, the advisory council will not let Isaac off easily. Isaac responds coldly, agreeing to let it slide this one time. Thomas steps closer, demanding that Isaac learn to restrain himself from now on. Thomas's gaze is sharp and cold, as if he has been watching Isaac for a very long time. Isaac thinks to himself that he has never truly understood or gotten close to the person Thomas really is. In Isaac's eyes, Thomas has always been a dry, cold butler who keeps his distance from everyone. However, if Isaac truly cannot restrain himself, at the very least he should discuss it with Thomas first. According to the records prior to the incident, Isaac held his ground until the Goethe family collapsed and eventually met his demise. Isaac smiles and replies, "Understood, thank you, Thomas." Thomas maintains a calm expression, silently observing everything. By the way, Isaac has been jogging every day lately. Is there a special reason for that? Isaac ponders, his eyes sparkling with determination. Throughout history, all mages who reached level 5 or higher trained their bodies. If it is a body that conducts mana, doesn't it require a corresponding level of physical fitness? Thomas narrows his eyes, his gaze sharp behind his glasses. Thomas carefully records his observations into a document. It is said that Isaac has completely cured the pneumonia of the children in Black Goose Village. The verification process is complete. Due to his unique constitution, it will be difficult for Isaac to use magic in the future, but Thomas cautiously considers that the path of a scholar or alchemist might be suitable for Isaac. With this, Thomas will also worry a little less. A knock is heard at the door, and Thomas says, "Come in." Nanny timidly peeks through the door. "Excuse me, Mr. Thomas." Thomas looks up, his gaze stern. Nanny is anxious, her hands clasped tightly. "Forgive me, Mr. Thomas." The maids keep disappearing without returning. I don't know about the others, but Annette is a diligent girl who hasn't missed a single day of work in 3 years. Nanny's eyes well up with tears. I am certain that something terrible has happened to Annette. The atmosphere in the mansion suddenly turned eerie, and a question laden with hidden meaning was uttered. Bill coldly recounted the incident of the 3 maids who had vanished within a mere 2 months. The maid replied with suspicion, questioning whether Bill was planning to run away himself. The maid firmly defended the honor of the deceased, insisting that the missing maids were not irresponsible runaways. Bill sneered, blurting out a cruel remark that perhaps the missing maids had simply grown tired of taking care of a sick father. Bill's insult was the last straw for the 2 maids, who immediately stepped forward to warn him. Bill remained unfazed, demanding they shut up and listen to his twisted theory. Bill whispered about dark magic, the malevolent power that was shrouding these mysterious deaths. Rumors of dark magic spread, casting a dark cloud over this prestigious family of mages. Bill turned his gaze toward Isaac, who was lying bedridden in a pathetic state of health. The naked truth was laid bare, leaving the maid shocked and unable to believe her own ears. Bill threw out a challenge, ready to confront anyone who dared to stop him from spreading these rumors.
Maid, enraged, criticized Bill as a wretch unworthy of the family's charity.
Bill turned to leave, but an authoritative voice suddenly boomed from behind him. Bill froze, cold sweat trickling down his face as he realized Isaac was standing right there. Isaac appeared with a chilling demeanor, demanding that Bill explain every detail. The air grew thick with tension. Bill could only bow his head in Isaac's presence. Bill began to recount everything, starting from 2 months ago. Bill gave an account of the first maid's disappearance.
Haunting images of brutal sacrifice flickered through Isaac's mind.
In the silent library, Isaac sat opposite Bill, listening to every word of the confession. Isaac stared straight at Bill, his gaze as icy and sharp as if he were trying to pierce his very soul. Bill trembled, unable to comprehend why Isaac's gaze was so terrifying. Isaac promised not to punish him, demanding that Bill tell the truth about everything. Bill hesitated, his fear evident on his face in the presence of Isaac's calm composure. Isaac made a sarcastic remark, causing Bill to startle and choke, caught in his own trap. Bill scratched his head with an awkward laugh, admitting the obvious truth that everyone already knew. Bill mentioned a certain person, the one who was always the victim of wounds with unknown origins. Bill concluded that such a person would certainly not need a peaceful end. In the cold room, Isaac sat with an expressionless face while the person opposite him trembled with fear, regretting every word he had spoken. Under the suffocating pressure, the person had no choice but to scream and beg Isaac to spare his life. He desperately clung to a sliver of hope, mentioning his life and future plans, but Isaac only responded with an ice-cold question. Isaac offered a cryptic smile, gently laying out his final condition in place of a death sentence. The person standing before Isaac could only clasp his hands in prayer, pure panic etched into every line of his face. Blue flames erupted violently, incinerating the last shred of the sinner's hope. Isaac sat silently on the bed, magical flames swirling around him as if awaiting the order to claim their next victim. The space plunged into darkness, with only the eerie blue light blazing on. The maid was stunned, realizing that Isaac's terrifying power was engulfing her. Isaac raised his finger, a soft snap sounding like the final decree of someone's fate. Isaac stated firmly, his eyes remaining eerily calm amidst the magic-filled air. As painful memories flood back, Isaac recalls the only people who dared to stand by his side after everything he had lost. 2 maids stood there, as silent and loyal as ghosts within the gloomy mansion. On the floor, shards of a shattered vial lay scattered, the purple liquid staining the ground like a scar from an avoidable tragedy. Droplets of blood trickled down, mingling with the liquid on the floor, marking a moment of pure anguish. Isaac coldly ordered the 2 maids to leave. He wanted to drown in his own isolation. Faced with Isaac's stern resolve, the maid couldn't help but tremble, her anxiety clearly etched upon her face. The shards on the floor served as a testament to the futility of the potions Isaac hadn't even bothered to use. The maid still tried to persuade him, her eyes filled with profound pity for her master. Hearing the word hope, Isaac could only offer a hollow laugh at deep-seated pain hidden behind his calm exterior. Isaac stood there, enveloped by darkness, haunted by the nightmare that he had killed the most important person with his own hands. Isaac's bloodied hand clenched tightly, his rage and pain threatening to explode. The 2 maids retreated in silence, understanding that no words of comfort could reach Isaac's soul at this moment. Choked with emotion, the maid confessed that she too had once experienced the pain of losing a dear friend by her own hands. Isaac was stunned, a flash of empathy appeared in his eyes for a fellow soul carrying similar scars. As memories of a friend resurfaced, the maid quietly recounted the tragic story of her past. The lingering regret of not being able to save Clara continued to torment the maid's mind. They both stood in the oppressive silence, the debris underfoot serving as a reminder of mistakes that could never be undone. The maid looked Isaac straight in the eye, understanding his plight, and offered a gentle, profound consolation. Isaac fell into deep thought, his deep blue eyes reflecting emotions too complex to put into words. There are moments in life when anyone can fall into adversity. Looking at his blood-stained hands, Isaac suddenly realized that Annette's pessimism from long ago was a strange comfort to his own soul. Isaac blamed himself for not digging deeper into those mysteries while he still had the chance. Knock on the door cut through Isaac's train of thought just as he was channeling his energy. Bill stood outside the door, announcing his presence. Isaac didn't hesitate to ask directly if Bill had found any trace of the maids. Bill insisted that the investigation required no real effort, as he had even gone to the local beggars to gather information. Isaac coldly pressed for results, demanding that Bill give him a final answer. Bill didn't hold back, exposing the scheme of slave traders who lure people with visions of a prosperous South only to sell them off. Bill sneered, mocking Isaac's naivety for even asking why they would need a broker. Bill analyzed the harsh reality, from the long distance travel to the protection of mercenaries against bandits.
Bill posed a rhetorical question. Could a group of weak young women possibly handle such dangers on their own?
Isaac nodded in agreement, acknowledging that Bill's reasoning was entirely grounded in reality. Deep down, Bill looked down on Isaac, viewing him as nothing more than a child ignorant of the real world. A thought flashed through Bill's mind, and he began calculating the benefits he could reap. Bill cunningly recounted how he had to spend his own money to bribe the beggars, all to gain Isaac's favor. Bill wore a triumphant smile, confirming he had spent every one of the 20 silver coins Isaac had given him. Isaac fell silent. That was enough money to cover half a year's wages. Bill beamed, praising Isaac's generosity in a blatantly artificial manner. When Bill asked if there was anything else to be done, Isaac replied that there was still one more mission. Isaac smiled enigmatically, promising a handsome reward if Bill accepted this challenge. Bill was overjoyed, telling himself that he had finally caught a fat goose. Bill was complacent with his manipulative skills, viewing Isaac as a golden egg-laying goose, even though he knew he was a ticking time bomb. Without a hint of fear, Bill reassured himself that there's no great profit without great risk, and quickly offered to take Isaac to meet the broker. Bill laughed out loud, worshipping the high-risk, high-reward philosophy he had always pursued. Bill stood in the dungeon, sighing wearily in his pathetic state. On the cold ground, a skull lay desolate amidst spider webs, foreshadowing a grim fate. In the suffocating space, a man screamed in despair. He couldn't believe his eyes, completely breaking down in the face of the ironic situation unfolding before him. Before the panic could even subside, Isaac appeared. Isaac stood there coldly, gazing at the person imprisoned in the dungeon with a mysterious look in his eyes. Isaac smiled faintly, his blue eyes glowing enchantingly. He stood there with a calm expression, as if everything were entirely under his control. Deep within the dark, damp sewers, where flickering lights cast shadows against cold stone walls, a brutal journey of survival begins. Clutching the prison bars until his hands trembled, the prisoner faced a panic that suffocated his very mind. Gerda screamed in despair, unable to believe he had fallen into such a wretched plight. Everything was supposed to be perfect, with Gerda having secretly let Isaac out of the mansion without a hitch. Communicating with Darius to get the servants out had also gone incredibly smoothly, so much so that Darius mistook Gerda for a fallen nobleman trying to find his way south. However, the sparkling light from the magic stone on Isaac's cloak made it impossible for anyone to look away. Isaac, with his delicate appearance and calm, deep blue eyes, radiated an aura completely different from those around him. Darius wore a sinister smile. Now he understood why Isaac had become a target. This face was truly invaluable. Gerda looked back at reality in shock. Why had he been thrown into this prison cell? To make matters worse, even Isaac had not escaped imprisonment. Isaac calmly observed the magic stone in his hand, wondering if he needed to compress more mana into it, which was nothing like what he had read in books. Gerda could not keep his composure and questioned Isaac about the next plan in this dire situation. Isaac continued to fiddle with the stone indifferently, ignoring Gerda's frantic state beside him. Isaac replied coldly, asking if there was any point in manners when they were about to die. Gerda snapped, declaring he would find Annette and the other servants no matter what. Isaac responded with a sarcastic question. Did Gerda have any way to break through these sturdy iron bars? With just a light flick of his finger, Isaac was ready to act. A sharp screech of bending metal echoed as the bars began to warp under the influence of Isaac's mana. The exit had opened, and Gerda stared in shock as Isaac stepped out with ease. Astonishment was etched across Gerda's face. He could not believe his eyes. Gerda hurriedly called out to Isaac, terrified of being left behind. Gerda begged Isaac not to abandon him, though he wasn't even sure if Isaac truly knew who he was. Isaac noted that this place was no different from a labyrinth. If not careful, they would easily be surrounded by Darius's men. Isaac coldly rejected Gerda, wishing him luck in finding his own way out. Gerda panicked, calling out after Isaac, pleading for help. Gerda collapsed onto the cold stone floor, begging in total despair. Gerda screamed through his tears, ready to do anything to have his life saved by Isaac. Isaac's footsteps halted. It seemed Gerda's plea had worked. Isaac's gaze turned icy cold, his usual composure replaced by a rising murderous intent. Isaac looked down coldly at the trembling prisoner, his voice resonating with overwhelming authority. You have done this before. The prisoner, bound tightly, screamed in despair. Please spare my life, master. The prisoner wept and pleaded, trying to justify his foolishness before Gerda and Isaac. I truly lost my mind. I shouldn't have done that, especially after all the kindness you showed me. Gerda remained unmoved, his deep voice exposing the traitor's past. Darius, you were originally a bandit. When I carried out the campaign to wipe out the bandits, you were the one who survived by selling out your organization's information. Gerda's blade gleamed as he growled, but this time, you dared to betray the Gerda family. Darius collapsed completely, tears streaming down as he heard the cold judgment. Therefore, I cannot trust you anymore. Darius panted incessantly, trying to cling to a final shred of hope. Master, please spare me just this once. Gerda cut him off, his patience exhausted. Enough. Do you really think the crime of selling the family's secrets to a criminal organization can be brushed aside so easily? Darius begged in desperation as he faced his impending death. "I will never betray you again." Isaac watched from afar, his eyes filled with contempt. "You would have been very useful to me had you not been so greedy." Isaac recalled Darius's schemes. As a former bandit well-versed in the underground economy, Darius surely used that knowledge to hunt down the maids, and his lie about squandering all the money was just an act. Isaac's memories began to clear. "If my memory serves me right." Isaac realized the horrifying truth. The criminal organization that Darius tried to sell secrets to in my previous life is the very same gang kidnapping the maids right now. The danger they posed was clear. These scum had expanded their influence through human trafficking. They would spread like mold within the Goethe family and torment the people. Isaac made a firm resolve. Any seed that could threaten the family must be uprooted. Darius looked up with utter confusion, having no idea what was happening. Isaac held out a paper with a red seal, his voice cold. "You said you would do anything, right?" Darius looked at the paper, panic clearly etched across his face. In the dark cellar, flickering light cast shadows against the old stone walls. The strangers stood solemnly in the room, awaiting orders. One of them spoke up to the man eating alone. "Father, you haven't eaten anything again today." Man silently put a piece of meat into his mouth, his face obscured by darkness. Those around him looked on with concern. "Please eat something. What will you do if you keep wasting away like this?" The man picked up his fork, his sharp gaze directed toward a skull. "You're in there, aren't you?" The skull mounted on a wooden stake replied in an eerie voice. "Just wait a little longer." The man frowned, his voice full of annoyance. You won't answer, will you?" The skull rattled, its voice echoing. "Has the strength of your soul already faded?" Another one interjected with an indifferent tone. "Hey, where is my bathwater?" The other replied, The only things left now are just goods to be sold to merchants." The heavy impact caused the prisoner to collapse in pain. Darius coldly grabbed the prisoner by the neck, lifting him into the air like a toy. Darius's face was splattered with blood, his eyes gleaming with brutality. Darius's arrival sent the others into a panic as he threatened to use them as bathwater. Darius turned and walked away, leaving behind a chilling command that made Goethe too terrified to resist. The sound of Darius's footsteps echoed through the dungeon corridor, signaling that a nightmare was about to unfold. At the scene, the corpse lay motionless on the cold stone floor, while Goethe and the others trembled in fear. The obsession with dark magic left them unable to maintain their composure. On the dining table, the blood-stained plate was proof of the brutality Darius had inflicted. Goethe and his accomplices were forced to act lest they become Darius's next victims. A strange noise rang out, cutting through the tense atmosphere. Goethe's eyes were locked on the dungeon door, anxiety clearly written on his face. The dark corridor was eerily silent, save for the crackling of torches. Goethe peered stealthily, trying to find the source of the sound. His eyes widened as terror began to consume Goethe's mind. The sound echoed again, closer than ever. Fear left Goethe unable to utter a single word. Something had just fallen to the floor, making a dry, hollow sound. The object rolled across the tiles, leaving Goethe horrified when he realized what it was. The skull rolled to Goethe's feet, a truly gruesome sight. Darius appeared, his gaze filled with madness and bloodlust. Goethe collapsed to the ground, completely stripped of his will to fight. Heavy boots stomped forward, and Darius's shadow loomed over the entire space. The gleaming blade in Darius's hand was stained with fresh blood. Utter terror filled Goethe's eyes as he knelt at Darius's feet. Darius flashed a sinister smile, his blood-splattered face made him look like a true demon. Darius slowly stepped forward, the blade in his hand still dripping with blood. Darius's arrogant demand echoed out, extinguishing any last hope Goethe had for survival. In the dim basement, Bill and the young man are kneeling on the stone floor, the air thick with palpable fear. A heavy footstep echoes. Isaac approaches, cutting off all their escape routes. Bill looks up, his face filled with shock as he realizes who is standing before him. Bill's hand tightens around the knife, his fingers trembling from internal conflict. Bill's eyes are bloodshot, cold sweat streaming down his scarred face. Isaac asks coldly, forcing Bill to make a life or death choice. Isaac presents a magic contract, compelling Bill to fulfill the first condition. Isaac smiles cryptically, confirming that this is the very contract that will seal Bill's fate. Isaac reads out each cruel clause, starting from absolute obedience to the requirement of keeping secrets. Bill is horrified by the final clause, the price for betrayal is death. Isaac raises the knife, demanding that Bill use his blood to sign the magic contract. A strange noise echoes from afar, forcing both of them to stop immediately. Isaac remains unflinching, urging Bill to make a quick decision. Isaac coldly questions Bill's desire to live. Rapid, urgent footsteps approach, the group is closing in. The contract lies there, its magical text waiting for the next name. Hasty footsteps run past, the situation becomes extremely critical. Isaac, losing patience, takes immediate action to force Bill's hand. The knife lightly grazes Bill's finger, and blood begins to trickle out. Bill places his bloodied finger onto the paper, sealing the diabolical oath. A brilliant blue magic circle erupts, engulfing them both.
Isaac smiles with satisfaction now that the contract is complete. The group rushes into the basement, shocked to find Bill free from confinement. Isaac gives an order and waves his hand, unleashing magic to attack the group. Bolts of magic strike the group down instantly. The group collapses to the floor. Isaac stands there with magic still swirling around his hands. Bill gazes in bewilderment at the group lying motionless on the ground. Bill cannot believe his eyes after witnessing such power. Shimmering magic crystal appears in Isaac's hand, ending all resistance. Isaac holds the sparkling magic crystal, a chilling wave of mana radiating with immense power. In a dark and damp underground tunnel, flickering lights cast shadows against the old brick walls. Isaac walks silently with Bill along the narrow path, each step taken with caution to avoid making a sound. Bill turns to look at Isaac, smiling with admiration at his ability to use ice magic. Isaac raises the ice crystal, calmly responding to doubts regarding the practicality of this magic. Isaac's gaze is resolute, affirming that the utility of ice magic is not as simple as it appears. Bill suddenly stops, his eyes widening as he senses the presence of the group ahead. Bill warns of the group's arrival, while Isaac remains calm and contemplative. Isaac poses an unexpected question about how to create ice, leaving Bill flustered amidst the critical situation. Bill stammers in surprise, completely unable to understand why Isaac is asking about that now. Isaac explains the process of shaping water in detail, his hands manipulating the flow of mana with fluid precision. The flow of mana around Isaac's hand compresses, a testament to the complex stages required to manifest ice magic. Bill urges Isaac to act quickly as they are about to be discovered, but Isaac continues to lecture him with complete nonchalance. Bill is panting, a sense of anxiety washing over him as the group draws closer. Isaac launches a lightning-fast attack, taking down the group before they even have a chance to question them. Isaac focuses his concentration to the utmost, ice mana wrapping around his fingertips. Group is struck with sheer terror witnessing Isaac's magical power, cold sweat streaming down their faces. Isaac uses phase-shifting magic, sending the group flying backward in the blink of an eye. After the strike, Isaac remains calm, explaining why this particular magic is rarely used in combat. Isaac stares straight ahead, his gaze revealing absolute confidence in the unique power he possesses. The ice magic stone rests firmly in Isaac's hand, a precious prize looted from the corpse of the Winter Spider Queen. Even though ice magic isn't common, it still holds astounding latent value. Isaac smiles faintly, knowing he has secured an invaluable treasure from an academic standpoint. Bill looks at the unconscious group member on the ground, wondering why Isaac chose to use such an inconvenient type of magic. Isaac explains that this magic leaves no evidence, making it difficult for enemies to discern the cause of the injuries. A mysterious smile spreads across Isaac's face as he asserts that this is the perfect choice for an assassination. Bill feels a chill down his spine at Isaac's ruthlessness and meticulous calculations. Bill asks about finishing off the group, but Isaac dismisses it as a waste of time. Isaac waves his hand to cast a spell, deciding to spare the group's lives to serve his longer-term goals. Amidst the dim corridor, Isaac fires his magic, taking down 2 members of the group in a flash. Isaac's cold eyes reveal killing intent as he growls that he only wants to finish off one specific person. Isaac strolls forward, a swirling orb of magic in his hand, leaving the final member of the group trembling in terror. Just one person, that is the only target Isaac is aiming for. Bill emerges from the shadows, facing Isaac head-on. Bill narrows his eyes at Isaac, unable to hide the arrogance of someone accustomed to blood on his hands. The group member is horrified to realize the person standing before him is none other than Bill, the notorious butcher. Faced with a warning about Bill's brutality, he only responds with a defiant smirk. Isaac smiles triumphantly, Bill showing himself saves him a great deal of time hunting him down. The magic orb in Isaac's hand explodes, transforming into a sharp lethal ice spike. Isaac points, the ice spike hovering in midair, ready to launch straight at the target. In an instant, the ice spike tears through the air, hurtling toward Bill with terrifying speed. Bill's eyes widen, reflex kicks in, forcing him to reach out to block it instead of dodging. With his bare hands, Bill shatters Isaac's ice spike right in front of him, creating a powerful shockwave. The group member is stunned by Bill's power, while Isaac maintains his chilling composure. Bill rubs the hand he used to block the attack, feeling the pain but remaining fully aware of the danger of the situation. Bill turns to look at Isaac, his voice dripping with sarcasm and contempt. Bill views Isaac like a piece of merchandise, sneering at the thought that he has found a source of amusement. Little does Bill know that he is the one walking into a death trap set by Isaac. The group member panics and retreats, begging for mercy upon realizing the massive gap in their strength. Bill, losing patience, waves his hand as shadows engulf the surrounding space. The group member screams in despair, trying to plead that he is just an ordinary person. Bill grabbed the member of the group by the throat, his overwhelming power leaving the opponent with nowhere to run. In that life-or-death moment, another ice spike suddenly flew in, piercing straight through Bill.
Bill froze as the ice spike drove deep into his chest and blood began to gush out. Bill looked back in shock. He couldn't believe that the ice spike he had just shattered could return to strike him. Isaac stared coldly at Bill, his hand still held in a commanding posture, controlling the magic. Blood spilled from Bill's mouth as he collapsed to the floor, his life force rapidly fading away. Isaac stepped forward, looking down at Bill's body at his feet, putting an end to the arrogance of the butcher. Isaac coldly delivered his verdict, thrusting the young man into the position of the leader of this place. The young man was stunned, his face clearly showing shock at such an unexpected demand. Without a moment's hesitation, the young man turned and fled, leaving the fallen foe lying motionless behind him. The young man's hand clenched tightly, the bloodstains smeared on his skin serving as proof of the crime he had just committed. Life is often ironic. Everyone will eventually have to dirty their hands with things they never wish to do. That is the harsh reality that everyone must face, including the young man standing before Isaac. The bloodstains on the young man's hands have now become permanent marks, things that will haunt him for the rest of his life. The young man tremblingly wiped away the stains, facing the harsh reality where only two paths remained. Either succumb under the weight of guilt or live on for the sake of those who have passed. Isaac looked at the young man, his eyes filled with profound empathy regarding that life-altering choice. The young man fell silent as old memories flooded back like a slow-motion film. Back then, Isaac himself had been burdened by guilt, which is why he gave the young man that advice. Bill's name was called from afar, and the young man coldly ordered the group to bring water. But for the young man, those words of advice were already enough. He did not want to hear them a second time.
The room door swung open, revealing the maids huddled together, trembling in the darkness.
The young man's eyes blazed, a cold determination was clearly visible in his pupils. Isaac walked silently along the deserted corridor, his lonely silhouette gradually vanishing into the mist. Annette dropped a bombshell, revealing that the southern nobles are aggressively hunting for women from other regions. Rumors spread that the women of the south didn't meet their standards, forcing the nobles to seek fresh faces for marriage. Faced with this prospect, Annette began to dig deep into the truth behind these enticing invitations. Annette discovered that with just a little bribe, there were people ready and willing to transport women to the south. Annette received an invitation to join the trip, but hesitation was clearly written all over her face. She firmly declined, weighed down by the burden of caring for her elderly father. That was the last time Annette saw her friends. They had completely vanished from the face of the earth since that day. Isaac fell into deep thought. Everything was unfolding exactly as Bill Nears had suspected. Annette gave a slight nod of confirmation, her eyes filled with sorrow as she recalled the past. When she reunited with her friends in the underground sewers, Annette was horrified to realize they had completely lost their minds. Overcome with terror, Annette knew that if she had stayed even a few more days, she would have gone mad just like them. Isaac listened in silence, fully understanding why the situation had spiraled into such a nightmare. That place was no paradise, it was a living hell where humans were bought, sold, or even eaten. Annette confessed that she always had the opportunity to escape at any moment. Regret and agony flickered in Annette's eyes as she spoke of the friends she had left behind. The iron gate that held Annette captive had been breached, offering her the only chance for survival. The stifled, choked sobs of her friends still haunt Annette's mind to this day. Annette looked back at where her friends remained trapped in the suffocating darkness. Annette trembled at the thought of what would have happened if she had stayed a few days longer. Annette's hand gripped the iron bars tightly, the pain of leaving her friends behind shattered her heart. Isaac's eyes revealed a deep understanding of the suffering Annette was enduring. With a choked voice, Annette admitted that if she had stayed, she would not have been able to escape a tragic fate herself. Isaac offered a gentle comfort, thanking Annette for her bravery in sharing such painful memories. Annette hesitated. There was still one more thing weighing on her mind that she wanted to share with Isaac. When the kidnappers brought them back to the mansion, Annette and her friends had once held hope for a bright future. But another friend of hers had lived in constant, overwhelming fear of being sent back to that place. Isaac confirmed it. It was clear the friend wasn't just afraid of punishment but of the death that awaited her. Isaac pondered, needing more time to investigate this lead further. Annette stood silently, waiting for Isaac's next move to bring everything to light. Rosa wore a knowing smile, convinced that Isaac was the one behind the sudden retreat of the bandit gang. Isaac furrowed his brows slightly, inwardly impressed by Rosa's keen intuition. Rosa continued, expressing her belief that Isaac was the only one who truly cared about lowly maids like her and Annette. Isaac simply listened in silence, his expression remaining as calm and composed as ever. Isaac's blue eyes flickered. It seemed as though something had just clicked in his mind. Isaac called out Annette's name, cutting through her train of thought. Isaac smiled faintly, expressing his appreciation for what Annette had just shared. Isaac hesitated, then changed his mind, telling Annette to head out first and that they would discuss other matters later. The door closed, leaving the room in a heavy silence. Isaac placed his hand on the table. A decision had just been made. Corners of Isaac's mouth curled up, a calculating smile appeared on his face.
Isaac realizes that Annette possesses unexpected potential, perhaps teaching her magic is a worthwhile investment. Under the brilliant sunlight, the castle stands tall and imposing, concealing countless secrets within its walls. Whispers begin to spread about why the maids who were fired were allowed to return. Rumor has it that Isaac personally intervened, even getting into a heated argument with the butler to keep him. Curiosity peaks. Is Isaac starting to develop feelings for these young girls? Bill Nears quietly enters the storage area, going about his daily routine. Bill Nears' hand gently glides over the surface of the crates, checking them carefully. Bill Nears sets the packages down, preparing for a secret meeting. A subordinate approaches, addressing Bill Nears as boss with a look of deep respect. Bill Nears waves his hand in a signal, and a sense of tension begins to loom. Bill Nears shouts in anger, forbidding his subordinate from calling him boss. Bill Nears laments that these sewers are always crawling with vagrants, and wiping out one criminal group is simply futile. Instead of exterminating them, Bill Nears believes that controlling and managing them would be far more profitable. Bill Nears panics and clutches his head, fearing the prospect of being betrayed and finished off if a conflict arises. Bill Nears slumps down onto a crate, his face filled with contemplation. Bill Nears interrogates whether his group was merely planted within this mansion. Bill Nears flashes a wicked smile, silently commending his predecessors' cunning in planting people within noble families. The subordinate continues his report, mentioning that the old boss always kept a sacrificial offering ready. Bill Nears is stunned, he is confused and fails to understand what sacrificial offering his subordinate is referring to. Tributes offered to the knights at this time of year. This is the beginning of all the trouble. The reason they have to hide in these slums is precisely because the knights used to protect them. A few days later, Isaac quietly observes the stillness of the room. Without hesitation, Isaac unleashes a magical flame, ready for battle. The burning fireball surges forward, tearing through the air in the room. Isaac smirks. This flame is merely a feint. The truly terrifying part lies hidden behind it. It is an ice crystal, silently tailing behind the fireball. The razor-sharp ice crystal collides, creating dazzling sparks. Magical explosion erupts, the fire sweeping through the luxurious room. Isaac clenches his fist, feeling the power surging within him. Once again, the flames roar to life, consuming everything in their path. The force of the collision makes the surrounding space tremble violently. Isaac gasps for air. After taking down Bill Nears, his magic circuit has increased from 4 to 5. He knows clearly that his victory over Bill Nears was merely due to luck. The mastery of the terrain, combined with Bill Nears' arrogance and ignorance, were the keys that allowed Isaac to finish him off. A glint of determination shines in Isaac's eyes. He cannot rely on luck forever. He had seized this opportunity with his own hands. He collapses onto the bed, exhausted after the intense battle. Before dying, his opponent revealed many secrets to Isaac, including the identities of the Goethe family's enemies. All that information has been optimized to counter mages. There will be no more lucky breaks like the one with Bill Nears. Isaac tells himself that he must become stronger to protect the Goethe family. A rapid knocking on the door echoes, and the servant's call snaps Isaac out of his thoughts. Isaac asks back in confusion as he sees the servant rushing into his room. They urge him to wake up because it's already dawn, time to prepare for the new day. Isaac wonders why they are in such a hurry. The servant smiles and delivers a major piece of news: the head of the family has returned. Isaac is stunned. This return was completely beyond his expectations. Isaac's heart races, and a sense of unease begins to overwhelm him. Isaac quickly mounts his horse and heads straight for the Goethe castle. Isaac stops in his tracks, a look of shock flashing in his eyes. In the dimly lit room, Isaac sat silently at his desk, the flickering candlelight casting shadows over the marks of time etched deep into the walls. With his pen gliding rapidly across the paper, Isaac was engrossed in transcribing lines of ancient script. The door swung open, and Schiller entered, sword in hand, his eyes filled with anxiety as he called out softly. Isaac looked up, his sharp eyes glinting with deep contemplation at the sight of Schiller. Schiller spoke up, breaking the heavy silence that permeated the room. Isaac placed his bag on the floor, his sword neatly propped up beside it, preparing for a looming departure. Isaac and Schiller faced each other, the air feeling thick with the weight of the impending moment. The steady sound of scissors echoed through the room as Schiller meticulously groomed Isaac. Under the candlelight, Schiller carefully trimmed Isaac's hair, a silent ritual of farewell. Schiller whispered, answering Isaac's request with a promise heavy with hidden meaning. Schiller affirmed that this departure would leave Isaac with no pain at all. Isaac's eyes flickered, his distant gaze suggesting he was coming to terms with his fate. Schiller continued his task, finishing the final snips of the scissors. Isaac reaffirmed his own desire, an unwavering choice that could not be swayed. Schiller embraced Isaac, whispering a final goodbye before the two parted ways. In that fleeting moment of closeness, Isaac and Schiller's breaths seemed to mingle in the quiet space. Schiller looked at Isaac one last time, his eyes heavy with the weight of a painful farewell.
Schiller stepped out of the room, leaving Isaac behind to wait in solitude. Isaac stood there in the empty room, engraving Schiller's parting words into his mind. The morning light flooded through the window, illuminating the solemn library. Isaac sat opposite Randolph, his sharp gaze seemingly piercing right through the man before him. The atmosphere in the library became stifling, broken only by the sound of the wind whistling through the cracks. Randolph held a piece of paper, his stern eyes fixed steadily on Isaac. Randolph questioned Isaac about his actions at the village of Black Goose. Isaac responded calmly, mentioning Schiller as Randolph's source of information. Isaac humbly denied any special skill, attributing everything to mere coincidence and luck. Isaac explained how the medical book had enabled him to treat the children. Randolph's fingers tapped against the table, a thoughtful silence enveloping them. Isaac sat in silence, wondering if his body was holding up well after the recent ordeal. Isaac recalled the doctor from Othen whom they had brought back, a man touted for his talent but who, in reality, proved useless. Light shone through the glass pane, and the room turned eerily still. Isaac sat across from Schiller in the library, the air between them heavy with oppressive silence. Schiller broke the silence by asking about the current situation. Isaac replied softly, turning his attention toward the winter-banned frontier fortress. Schiller appeared curious about Isaac's sudden interest, but Isaac insisted that as a Goethe, he was duty-bound to go there. Winterband remained as it always was, a place of nothing but monsters, nights, and eternal blizzards. Schiller mused, admitting that the only unique aspect of this trip was the stopover at the city of Bern. Isaac mentioned the city of Bern, famous for its complex sewer system. Schiller alluded to a minor, troublesome incident that had occurred there. Isaac is surprised to hear that an infantryman attacked a company commander, assuming the culprit must have already been executed. Schiller denies this, explaining that it was the very company commander who was attacked that requested a court-martial. Just then, the door to the room swings open abruptly. Schiller speaks up to welcome those who have just entered. Fickle and Randolph appear, bowing respectfully toward Isaac. Isaac glances at the newcomers with a sharp, piercing gaze. Randolph responds with a calm demeanor, placing his hand over his chest to signify loyalty. Schiller orders Isaac to leave so that he can speak privately with Fickle and Randolph. Isaac silently rises and walks out of the room. Before leaving, Isaac firmly demands that Schiller proceed with the court-martial immediately. Fickle appears impatient, wanting to execute the rebel at once to maintain discipline, while Schiller reminds Fickle that he is being too hasty. Schiller turns to ask for Randolph's opinion on the matter. Randolph replies that he is merely following the orders of the commander-in-chief. Schiller sighs, wondering how Randolph remains loyal after having his ear cut off by that very commander-in-chief. The sound of Isaac's footsteps echoes as he leaves the room filled with conspiracies. Isaac's eyes turn cold, he has seen through it all. Isaac recognizes the Goethe emblem on the cloaks of Fickle and Randolph. They are knights of the winter-banned border fortress. And that man named Randolph. Randolph is certainly a victim of that mutiny. The sound of rapid footsteps echoes down the hallway. Schiller rushes over, his face clearly showing urgency as he searches for Isaac. Schiller cannot hide his sense of urgency, trying to grab Isaac's attention to convey critical information. Anxiety is etched on Schiller's face, as if a major incident has just occurred that he cannot remain calm about. Beneath the shadows of the fortress, a secret meeting is taking place between calculating figures. Isaac stops, his sharp gaze fixed on Schiller, waiting for an explanation for this haste. Schiller begins to reveal the existence of a slave trafficking ring in the sewers, where dark secrets are gradually being unearthed. Isaac listens in silence, his composure standing in stark contrast to Schiller's visible tension. Schiller continues his report, his eyes unable to hide the fear of the forces behind the bribery cases. The name mentioned makes the atmosphere heavy. The winter-banned knights, they are not to be taken lightly. Isaac's eyes suddenly turn cold, a flash of realization strikes his mind. Schiller continues to talk about the corpse just found at the sewer entrance, bloody proof of the mysterious assassin's brutality. A gruesome detail is laid bare. The victim had every finger cut off, except for the left pinky. Isaac clenches his fist, his patience wearing thin in the face of these horrific revelations. Schiller tremblingly presents the evidence, a severed human finger, a testament to a direct threat. The horrifying scene on Schiller's bed, where the mysterious assassin left a deadly warning. Not stopping there, the mysterious assassin also sent a threatening message through Schiller's own subordinates. A 2-day deadline is given. If the kickback money is not ready, Schiller's life will be at stake. Fear engulfs Schiller. He knows full well the mysterious assassin is not joking about the price to be paid. Schiller begs Isaac for help, blaming his ironic circumstances for pushing him into this position. Isaac remains pensive, his deep blue eyes analyzing every move on this dangerous chessboard. Isaac begins questioning the witness about the time of the murder, searching for cracks in their testimony. The sole witness saw a flash of a blade. Everything happened so quickly that there was no time to react. Another notable detail: the mysterious assassin had a bandage wrapped around their head, a remnant of a previous battle. Isaac falls silent as the pieces of information gradually fall into place in his mind. Schiller cannot believe Isaac's composure. He panics at such an indifferent attitude. Isaac reassures Schiller, walking with a confidence that suggests he already has victory in his grasp. Isaac's firm declaration: he will not let Schiller die at the hands of the mysterious assassin. The story flashes back to when Isaac's father, on his way back, brought along 2 knights to demand a military tribunal. That was also when they stopped at the sewer and killed a bandit as an example, a brutal act carried out without a moment's hesitation. Every clue aligns perfectly, exposing the true identity of the perpetrator hiding in the shadows. Isaac grinds his teeth, his eyes surging with fury as he faces the horrifying truth. Isaac's rage explodes. He cannot accept that those who claim to be Knights of Winterband have fallen to such a level. If all of this is true, then they are no longer the kingdom's shield but a malignant tumor that must be rooted out. The sound of Isaac's footsteps echoes through the dungeon corridor, causing Schiller to stand on edge, startled. Schiller trembles as he asks his question, realizing that Isaac is approaching the holding area. Isaac coldly interrogates Schiller about the death row prisoner being held for treason. Inside the dark cell, the figure of Randolph sits with his head bowed, his hands shackled in silence. Isaac stands before the iron bars, his sharp gaze fixed on Randolph, who is shrouded in darkness. Randolph slowly looks up, revealing eyes filled with deep-seated hatred. Isaac's visit to the death row inmate wasn't a coincidence, but a calculated move to verify a crucial truth. Isaac is tracing the connection between the Winterband Knights and the NIRS organization, and coincidentally, Kyle is the one who once stood against them. Believing Kyle holds the key, Isaac confronts him directly about the mysterious organization known as NIRS. Isaac makes no attempt to hide his intentions, frankly bringing up suspicions regarding the organization's human trafficking ring. Kyle grips his shackled hands tightly, reacting with palpable tension at the mention of his past. Kyle's gaze darkens as he seems to be struggling internally against Isaac's probing questions. Isaac maintains his calm composure, his blue eyes intently observing every shift in Kyle's expression. Isaac continues to apply pressure, drilling deeper into the link between the sewers and Kyle's company commander. Kyle remains silent, his face shrouded in shadows, offering no response. Kyle rises to his feet, the sound of iron chains clanking harshly, and coldly declares that he will only speak once. Isaac grips the iron bars, his gaze remaining unflinching despite Kyle's intimidation. Kyle grinds his teeth, denying any knowledge and attempting to shut down Isaac's interrogation. Isaac narrows his eyes, determination radiating from his deep blue irises. Isaac suddenly turns the tables by asking the death row inmate for his name, leaving Kyle stunned. A smirk flickers across Isaac's lips. He has successfully cornered Kyle. Isaac calls Kyle by his true name, shattering his final defense with the truth he had been holding on to. Kyle's eyes widen in shock, his previous composure completely collapsing. Kyle steps back, the sound of chains dragging across the stone floor echoing with unease. Trembling, Kyle demands to know how Isaac discovered that name. The story traces back to the chaotic days when civil war in the kingdom began to escalate. Fire consumed everything, reducing the kingdom to rubble during those dark times. Every tragedy began at the succession ceremony, where power became the bait for greed. The second prince, having failed in the struggle for the throne, harbored a deep-seated hatred. He orchestrated a bloody massacre right at the succession ceremony, turning glory into mourning. After the kingdom was subjugated by the empire, public outrage fueled an uprising, igniting a prolonged civil war. Kyle, held captive in the dungeon, eyes Isaac with intense suspicion as he mentions his name. Surprise is written all over Kyle's face as he confronts Isaac standing outside the cell bars. Isaac responds calmly with a brief answer, his sharp blue eyes showing no sign of wavering. Old pages turn, revealing portraits and histories of notorious villains, including Kyle himself. The records of the genius Kyle, predicted to become the 7th sword saint of the continent, shine with brilliance. Isaac observes Kyle closely, silently acknowledging that the evaluations in the books were spot on. A surge of magical power radiates from Kyle's body, leaving Isaac genuinely impressed by his extraordinary effort. Isaac cannot hide his curiosity about what the future might hold if Kyle were to truly reach the pinnacle of his power. Kyle recalls memories of a past life where a talent like his managed to escape execution and become the leader of the rebel faction. The air in the dungeon grows stiflingly tense as the truth slowly unfolds. Isaac offers an enigmatic smile, exposing Kyle's true identity as the son of Catian. Kyle is left reeling, his gaze flickering violently at the information Isaac has just revealed. In the cramped confines of the dungeon, Kyle demands to know the identity of this man who holds his deepest secret. Isaac responds coldly, asserting that he couldn't care less about the background of a mercenary from a neighboring land. Isaac scornfully calls Kyle a piece of trash who vanished a decade ago, making the atmosphere even heavier. Kyle stands opposite Isaac, his suspicions regarding Isaac's true identity deepening. Isaac poses a calculated question about Winterband's involvement in the slave trade, leaving Kyle deep in thought. The flickering candle in the dungeon illuminates the iron chains, serving as a grim warning of Kyle's fate. Isaac forces Kyle to speak, leaving him no room to evade the issue. Isaac puts forward a dangerous theory that the commanders will frame Kyle for the crimes. Kyle collapses, realizing that the prospect of becoming a wanted criminal is imminent. Isaac ruthlessly extinguishes any hope of revenge Kyle might have had with his cold, biting words. Kyle's gaze darkens, resentment and a newfound resolve begin to ignite within him. Isaac watches Kyle in the dungeon, darkness enveloping them both like a political chess game. Isaac thinks to himself that Kyle is not a man who can be easily manipulated. Isaac turns and walks away, leaving Kyle behind in the darkness of the cell. Under the night sky, Isaac decides to personally lure those behind the scenes out into the light. Individual drops of water hit the cold stone floor, signaling the start of a new plan. The two walk silently through the stone corridor, venturing deeper into the night. Fikel and Randolph trudge through the dark hallway, wondering why not a single subordinate is in sight. Silence blankets the area, making Fikel and Randolph feel increasingly uneasy. The prison door swings wide open, revealing an empty room inside. Fikel and Randolph continue deeper inside, suspicion growing within them about the true state of affairs. Fikel grips the doorknob tightly, wondering if their plan has hit a snag. The sound of the door opening rings out harshly, leaving Fikel and Randolph stunned by the sight before them. A young man in a polished suit stands there, offering a humble invitation in a composed tone. Fikel halts, his eyes narrowing in wariness as he catches sight of Isaac. Fikel wonders why Isaac is dressed as a servant instead of one of Nir's subordinates. Fikel observes closely, Isaac appears to be carrying no weapons on him. Fikel and Randolph exchange glances, their suspicion toward Isaac mounting. Both draw their swords, cautiously stepping inside where Isaac stands. Fikel squints, trying to pierce through the shadows ahead where Isaac is present. In the dark corner, Isaac sits quietly by the light of a flickering candle. Fikel confronts Isaac with a challenging attitude. Isaac looks up, his voice cold as he retorts to Fikel and Randolph's arrogance. Isaac calmly poses a cryptic question to Fikel and Randolph. Fikel and Randolph are startled. Isaac's tone makes them feel something is deeply wrong. An authoritative voice resonates from Isaac, causing Fikel and Randolph to tremble. Isaac sits there, his calm demeanor in stark contrast to the overwhelming presence he exerts. The candle flickers, reflecting Isaac's composed expression. Fikel breaks into a cold sweat, the fear of facing Isaac begins to take hold of his mind. Randolph, unable to withstand the pressure of Isaac's presence, collapses to his knees. Fikel roars at Isaac, struggling to regain a shred of his remaining pride. Fikel trembles, still unaware of the terrifying truth regarding Isaac's real identity. Isaac stands up, his figure swallowed by the shadows. Isaac smiled, a smile that sent shivers down the spines of Fikel and Randolph. Fikel and Randolph were horrified as they realized Isaac's true identity. The truth was laid bare, it was none other than young Master Isaac. Amidst a snowy, white-blanketed night, a solitary small house sits silently in the heart of the forest. A bag full of money is lifted, the rhythmic clinking of metal echoing through the space. Fikel mocks someone for their incredible ability to rake in cash, while Randolph sits opposite with an indifferent expression. Randolph gazes at the shimmering gold coins in his hand, satisfied that the profit is enough to cover food and firewood for the entire month. Fikel grins calculatingly, suggesting that this money is more than enough to replace the team's rusted swords. The gold coins are divided, falling into their palms like a reward for their latest job. Heavy footsteps resound, cutting through the excited atmosphere of the room. Isaac appears at the door, his cold gaze fixed on Fikel and Randolph, causing the conversation to come to an abrupt halt. Fikel is startled, hurriedly clutching the bag of money as if trying to hide something. Isaac questions them in a stern tone, forcing Fikel and Randolph to account for their actions. A hot cup of tea releases wisps of steam, marking the start of a tense confrontation. Isaac sits opposite them, appearing understanding, yet his eyes never leave the two men who keep their heads bowed. Isaac remarks on their father, claiming he is far too rigid and lacks the necessary flexibility. Isaac stares directly at the person opposite him, drilling deep into the hidden corners of their mind. Isaac exposes the reason for their respect for their father, while simultaneously pointing out their helplessness in watching soldiers fall. Isaac coldly concludes that they extorted bandits to make up for supply shortages, questioning whether it was for their father or for Gerda. Fikel and Randolph cannot deny it, they can only admit that everything is exactly as Isaac speculated. Isaac declares that he will deliver his verdict, his sharp gaze locking onto Fikel and Randolph. The death sentence is pronounced, leaving Fikel and Randolph stunned and speechless. Fikel stammers as he asks about the sentence, hoping it is merely a mistake. Isaac firmly asserts that they will be brought before a military tribunal, causing Fikel to slam his hand on the table in fury. Fikel retorts, asking if Isaac truly understands what real hunger is, as memories of fallen comrades resurface. Brutal images of comrades suffering casualties from freezing temperatures and deaths caused by dull weapons flash by as a desperate defense. Isaac maintains a cold expression, decisively dismissing every argument Fickle has just presented. Isaac mocks Fickle, noting that he certainly has plenty of excuses to justify his wrongdoings. Isaac continues to force Fickle to explain the kidnapping of civilians, but Fickle denies any responsibility. Isaac doesn't stop, continuing to pressure Fickle on whether he is truly clean or if he has crossed the line as well. Fickle has no words left to justify himself, his face showing clear signs of panic under the pressure from Isaac. Fickle's eyes go blank, absolute panic visible on his face as he faces the suffocating pressure. Fickle clenches his fist, muttering bitterly that he should never have expected someone like Randolph to understand the situation from the start. Fickle shouts, urging Randolph to stand up because they are members of the Swords of Gerda and cannot just sit still forever. Randolph draws his sword from its sheath, his gaze steady as he asserts that if it is to protect Gerda, he is ready to cut down any obstacle. Isaac stands there, coldly witnessing Randolph's resolve while the sword in his hand emanates an intense killing intent. Fickle cannot believe his eyes, he screams, questioning if Randolph is truly serious about this insane decision. Fickle trembling points out that neutralizing a ticking time bomb like Isaac is the most urgent priority right now. Isaac gazes straight ahead, his blue eyes radiating a calm composure in the face of Fickle's threats. Isaac tightens his grip on the hilt, a blue aura beginning to cloak the steel blade, signaling a powerful strike about to be unleashed. Isaac steps forward, each of his strides creating shockwaves that cause the ground to shake violently.
Isaac smirks, a silent laugh echoing in his mind at Fickle's overconfidence.
Isaac realizes Fickle is channeling his aura and immediately warns him against the intent to use that power. Fickle braced himself, his gaze turning icy as he focused every ounce of his spirit onto his glowing blade. Randolph stared at Fickle in disbelief. He couldn't bring himself to accept that things had reached this point of no return. Randolph recalled the early days when the idealistic fire to protect Gerda still burned brightly in their hearts. But now, looking at his own actions, Randolph wondered if what they were doing was truly still for that noble cause. Randolph lowered his head, his doubt about their cause evident as he faced Isaac. Randolph challenged Fickle, reminding him of the oath they had both sworn years ago. Randolph remembered their vow. If Fickle was the sword, Randolph would be the sturdiest shield to protect him. But then, a warning he had heard echoed chillingly in Randolph's mind. A sword that can cut through everything without breaking is the only true masterpiece. However, as Randolph gripped his hilt, he felt a terrifying change within the very weapon in his hand. When a masterpiece gains its own will, it corrupts into a demonic sword, and Randolph was now facing exactly that. Fickle shouted in panic, questioning Randolph about the bizarre actions he was taking at that very moment. A deafening clash rang out, sparks flying as their blades collided in a life-or-death struggle. Randolph was stunned to realize the danger, having narrowly avoided a lethal wound himself. Randolph roared in pain and regret, asserting that the warnings given to Fickle were absolutely correct. Fickle screamed, asking if Randolph had truly lost his mind to attack an ally, warning him that his head would soon be rolling on the floor. Randolph gritted his teeth, retorting that this was the karma they had to bear for all they had done. Blades clashed again, and Randolph coldly demanded that Fickle be honest with himself. The tense confrontation erupted as swords swung through the air, fierce and unforgiving. Randolph coldly questioned the true motive behind the shady actions, asking if it was really just for the sake of this territory. A fatal strike landed, blood splattering in the darkness, putting an end to the sequence of violence. Isaac sat quietly in the cold stone room, while Randolph stood there, ruminating on the true reason why Fickle had drawn his blade. Randolph confessed that when Fickle discovered the truth, their original plan was to eliminate him, or at least wound him enough to silence him. Isaac replied with a cold assertion, exposing Randolph's humiliating failure before Fickle. The room fell into an eerie silence. Randolph could only stand frozen before the naked truth Isaac had just laid bare. Randolph's face was a mask of shock, every line showing clear traces of regret and fear. Yet Fickle had chosen to spare him, asking only that Randolph listen to the truth and voluntarily submit to being bound without resistance. Isaac twisted the knife further, questioning if Randolph had stopped his hand because of a lingering sense of guilt. Randolph hung his head, unable to speak. His silence served as the most painful answer of all. Randolph's legs trembled, his anxiety visible in every minor gesture. Randolph turned away, the fear of his family being put in danger if this secret leaked suffocating his mind. Isaac stared straight at Randolph, his gaze cold as if trying to pierce through his mask. Randolph jolted, cold sweat breaking out on his forehead as he realized the situation had spiraled far beyond his control. Panic seized Randolph's mind, wondering what other catastrophe was about to befall them. Isaac's gaze remained sharp, observing every movement of Randolph with terrifying composure. A faint smile touched Isaac's lips, signaling that a calculated psychological game was about to begin. Suddenly, Randolph turned around, a cry of astonishment escaping his lips as he faced the grim reality. Isaac coldly interrogates Randolph, demanding that he pay for the sins he has committed in a different way. Randolph is stunned, his face visibly showing panic and fear at Isaac's question. In the past, the ambitious Randolph began dealing with Nears, marking the beginning of a chain of sins. Blinded by greed, Randolph stopped at nothing. He manipulated the slave market and even laid hands on the servants within the estate. When all his schemes collapsed, Randolph frantically sought to sell Isaac out to another nation. A blade flashes, cutting short Randolph's malicious intent.
Fatal strike is blocked just in the nick of time.
The one who steps in to stop the act is Zeke, demonstrating his loyalty to the family. Zeke stands tall, his sword pointed directly at the enemy, shielding Isaac behind him. All the sins eventually fall upon the head of the unfortunate one. Amidst the city streets, the outcast stands silently in the shadows, looking toward the hanging silhouette. Randolph's gaze is filled with melancholy, harboring feelings that cannot be put into words.
Randolph walks through the night, leaving the prying eyes behind him.
The shimmering chandelier illuminates the luxurious room where Isaac sits in silence.
Isaac sips his tea, reflecting on the grim truth behind the greed of the commanders.
The shortage of supplies is the painful reality that the Goethe family must face.
The Goethe family guards the northern border on behalf of the royalty in exchange for an annual shield tax.
But ironically, this primary source of income has been declining significantly over time. Even so, the Goethe family can neither complain nor find ways to accumulate further wealth. It all stems from a past incident.
Flames erupt, consuming everything in sight.
When no one could stop it, the king had to bow before the emperor, and Zeke was executed by the royal knights. After that incident, the kingdom officially became a vassal of the empire. Thanks to the king's fragile mercy, the Goethe family escaped execution, but they were stripped of their dukedom and exiled to the barren northern territory. If they even attempt to accumulate wealth, the royalty will immediately accuse the Goethe family of treason. Therefore, maintaining the current system, despite the tight budget, remains the safest option. Isaac is lost in thought, his gaze distant as if calculating a future full of turmoil. Isaac and Zeke sit across from each other in the quiet space, the heavy atmosphere hanging over their skeptical conversation. Isaac's gaze suddenly turns icy, as if he has just realized some bitter truth.
Isaac calmly asks a question that digs deep into the royalty's exhausted financial state, an issue Zeke finds hard to deny.
Isaac continues his argument, posing a hypothesis on how the royalty would react if the Goethe family became self-sufficient and refused to pay taxes. Isaac emphasizes that the biggest barrier isn't permission, but the fact that the family has yet to find a way to truly master its own financial destiny. Zeke listens attentively, his face revealing clear contemplation at Isaac's sharp words. Isaac does not hesitate to point out their precarious position, surrounded by enemies waiting for a chance to strike. Schiller stands there, observing the conversation with an anxious look, seemingly aware of the dangerous repercussions of Isaac's plan. Zeke clasps his hands, pondering the scenario Isaac has just painted. Every gesture shows extreme caution. Zeke acknowledges the validity of Isaac's thinking, but he still needs a practical solution rather than mere theory. Zeke demands that Isaac provide a concrete plan, proof that he isn't just blowing smoke. Isaac meets Zeke's stern gaze, calmly responding with the confidence of someone holding the key trump card. Isaac reaches out, as if starting to map out the first steps of his daring plan. Isaac declared outright his intention to sever all ties with the old church, a high-stakes move but one he deemed necessary. Isaac analyzed the stifling grip of the old church's ascetic dogmas, which were actively hindering the family's progress. Zeke appeared concerned, warning him that the Vatican would never stand idly by and watch them do such a thing. Isaac clenched his fist, asserting that it was precisely because of that risk that they needed a legitimate reason to act. With a cryptic smile, Isaac affirmed that he already held the method to fabricate that very legitimacy. Isaac turned to seek Schiller's opinion, wanting to know what he thought of the plan he had just revealed.
Zeke took a sip of tea, suspicion gnawing at him as he wondered if these ideas were truly coming from Isaac himself.
Schiller stood there, his face etched with worry as he recalled the hardships Isaac had endured in the past. Schiller mused to himself about how Isaac hadn't even received a proper education due to those uncontrollable mana explosions from before. Suddenly, Isaac sprang up, his decisive movement caught Schiller off guard. From the window, Isaac looked down at the courtyard, where shadowy figures stood waiting, signaling that an event was about to begin. Isaac stepped closer, his gaze remaining steadfast regarding his plan to sever ties with the old church. Schiller peered through the glass, his expression filled with deep, unfathomable contemplation. A light tapping sound against the glass echoed steadily, shattering the silence of the room. Schiller stood there, intently listening to each tap, his mind struggling to decipher what Isaac was truly plotting. A faint smile appeared on Schiller's lips. It seemed he had realized something important from those rhythmic taps. In the stillness, Schiller quietly observed from the window, as if he had finally grasped an important clue. The sound of carriage wheels rolling along the deserted road broke through the cold, late-night atmosphere.
A few days later, in the southern region of Burn City, the carriage silently approached the ancient church. Carriage stopped and Randolph emerged from the shadows. The tension became suffocating. Hanbin appeared, holding a lantern, its amber glow cast light upon a face obscured by a hood. Hanbin spoke, his cold voice echoing, "Kiss the entrails of the black half." Facing Hanbin, Randolph stood still, the very air seeming to freeze. Randolph responded with a cryptic tone, "And joy shall make sport of thee." Hanbin nodded slightly, accepting the bewitching words. A look of determination crossed Hanbin's eyes as he continued to grip the lantern tightly. The order was issued, "Bring me the sacrifice." The carriage door swung open and a violent tremor rippled through the air. Isaac was dragged out under guard, his hands tightly bound, his face showing clear signs of exhaustion. Randolph shoved Isaac roughly, forcing him to step down from the carriage. Randolph asked skeptically, "Is this truly the promised sacrifice? You were entrusted with this task, can you not even recognize him?" With the lantern light shining directly onto Isaac's face, Randolph replied, "We must verify this from our end." Hanbin smirked, his eyes filled with calculation, "Especially if you want to receive the reward you desire." Isaac remained silent, his eyes gleaming with resilience despite being bound. Hanbin raised the lantern higher and commanded, "The sacrifice has arrived. Bring in the real gift, servant." The church doors creaked open slowly, and Hanbin muttered, "The goddess of fire shall gladly accept it." The group led a subdued Isaac toward the light within the church. An old woman leaning on a cane emerged from the darkness, her voice rasping, "As the goddess wills." The old woman gestured to the group, "Follow me." Randolph gasped for air, sweat beading on his forehead, he could no longer hide his extreme tension. Randolph muttered in disgust, "Those hateful bastards." Randolph tried to stay calm and ordered his men, "Leave him, no, let's go." Isaac stood surrounded by strangers, his fate now hanging by a thread. A hand grips a lantern tightly, its flickering golden light casting long shadows into the murky darkness as a mysterious invitation echoes through the void. Isaac, bound tightly, walks gloomily surrounded by masked figures in black, heading toward a destination no one could have anticipated. With his hands tied and face obscured, Isaac moves silently, finding himself entirely under the control of others. Beneath his hood, Isaac's gaze reveals a deep contemplation, displaying a chilling composure in the face of dire circumstances. Time shifts back a few days, to a period when everything was still shrouded in mystery. A cup of hot tea steams intensely, signaling the beginning of a conversation heavy with schemes. Bijan sits calmly across from Isaac, confirming that the crimes of Randolph and Fickle have finally been exposed. Bijan gently lifts his teacup, informing Isaac that he has been stripped of his position as squad leader. Flicker of surprise crosses Isaac's face as he admits he had no idea Bijan held such an influential position. Isaac remains silent, his eyes fixed on the steam rising from his tea, not uttering a single word. Isaac pauses, seemingly struck by something that demands more careful thought. Bijan smiles, skillfully steering the conversation by asking about the tea, which hails from Isaac's homeland. Isaac maintains his composure, lifting the teacup to his lips without revealing a shred of emotion. Setting the cup back on the table, Isaac bluntly questions why he wasn't reported. Isaac asserts that his name is not Carlson, shattering the facade between the two men. Bijan offers an enigmatic smile, admitting that he intentionally covered it up to exploit Isaac in the future. Isaac's eyes flicker, and a sense of wariness stirs within him. Isaac cannot hide his anxiety, wondering what Bijan's true intentions really are. Isaac is completely deadlocked, unable to fathom what is going on in Bijan's mind. Bijan nonchalantly tells Isaac to focus on his own goals instead of trying to guess his thoughts. Bijan exposes Isaac's secret plan to eliminate Viscount Klaus von Bottmer, the man who massacred his clan. Isaac is shaken, his gaze turning sharp as Bijan sees right through his soul. Isaac clenches his fist and demands to know why Bijan didn't stop him, receiving a defiant response in return. Isaac points out the difference between a nobleman of the kingdom and a foreigner like himself. Bijan coldly declares that he needs a masterwork blade with a will of its own to carry out his plan. Bijan calmly sips his tea, exerting an invisible pressure on Isaac. Beads of sweat form on Isaac's brow as he realizes he is being led into a dangerous game of chess. Bijan offers his help, a promise that is laden with hidden traps. The two face each other over the tea table, an uneasy alliance formed in the shadows. Amidst the bustling streets of Burn City, darkness is silently creeping through every alleyway. Scream echoes across the square, a desperate warning being uttered to the crowd. A priest stands surrounded by holy knights, loudly declaring that dark magic is spreading and terrorizing the people. The priest calls upon the crowd to seek salvation through faith rather than relying on lords indifferent to their suffering. From behind a curtain, Isaac quietly observes the fanatics of the old church manipulating the masses. Bijan looks pensive, seemingly gauging the threat posed by the propaganda. Isaac interrupts the train of thought, asserting that those words are not worth worrying about at this moment. Bijan cannot help but feel uneasy, questioning if Isaac truly wants to walk into danger by making himself a sacrificial lamb for the cult.
Isaac replies calmly, knowing that there is no bait more tempting to the cultists than himself.
Silence fills the cramped space as both Isaac and Bijin understand the unimaginable perils awaiting them in the cult's lair. Isaac questions the authenticity of the brutal rumors, wondering if the risk is truly worth it. Isaac reiterated his hypothesis regarding the intimate connection between the old church and the cultists. Isaac asserted that Nirs is one of the cult members, a crucial link that must be exposed. Bijin nodded in agreement. Nirs' involvement in black magic and brutal murders is undeniable.
Isaac questioned the details regarding the silver coins Nirs had used in his transactions.
Those coins were minted directly by the royal family, evidence that Nirs' origins were anything but ordinary. Bijin reasoned that someone like Nirs certainly couldn't have possessed such high-value coins on his own. Isaac deduced, could this be the smoking gun for the clandestine relationship between the old church and the cult? Isaac coldly asked if Bijin was merely clutching at some fragile hope.
Isaac's eyes turned icy as he recalled the moment the dark sect began to rise.
The dark sect began sowing fear with their relentless acts of brutality.
Bizarre murders and sacrificial rituals turned Burn City into a living nightmare.
And the one who profited most from that chaos was none other than the old church.
They hunted fanatics in the name of justice, turning the square into a site for burning suspects alive. That hypocritical mercy helped the old church's reputation skyrocket in the eyes of the people. Isaac slammed the table in indignation. He could no longer tolerate the absurdity of those in power.
Doubling the taxes was still not enough for their bottomless greed.
Now, they even wanted to mobilize the Holy Knights to serve the expansion of the temple. Patience had run dry as the unreasonable demands from the old church weighed heavier and heavier on their shoulders. Severing ties with the old church was not just about financial interests. It was the first step to protecting Gerda. Heavy footsteps echoed in the darkness. It all began here when the fanatics of the old church burned everything, but 3 saints survived the flames. The saints, covered in burned scars, declared in unison that they had seen the true form of God while standing on the brink of life and death. Isaac cursed under his breath. No one had bothered to ask for his opinion. The sound of the cane continued to tap rhythmically against the floor. By consuming that flesh, they are reborn within us. Wisdom, the power, the vitality, and even the pains and joys they experienced in their lifetimes.
That is how humanity achieves eternity. Bijin was horrified by the sickening words, his disgust evident on his face.
With a loud thud of the cane against the floor, the priest shrieked, the sacrificial offering has arrived. Absorb the noble soul to become noble. Absorb the wise soul to become wise. Absorb the pure soul to become pure.
We have brought a soul possessing all 3 elements. Enjoy it.
Frenzy visible in his eyes, the priest became lost in the grotesque feast. Isaac could no longer endure this garbage talk. Isaac's patience had completely evaporated. How much longer must we tolerate this nonsense, young master? Without letting anyone wait any longer, Isaac officially initiated his bloody retaliation. A fatal blow is only for those who dare to unsheath their swords first. Isaac responded with cold, absolute brutality.
The fanatics began to collapse in a state of panic.
Fear took hold of the minds of those who were just moments ago filled with frenzy. Beneath his hand, fresh blood had stained the entire floor red. Brushing aside the pool of blood beneath his feet, he stared coldly and growled, "Don't forget the reason we stepped foot in this place." Isaac breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, everything was settled. Isaac instructed Nirs and the others to attack only if provoked first. The subdeacon shrieked in rage, cursing those who dared to turn their backs on the goddess. Without hesitation, Isaac launched a preemptive strike, cutting off the subdeacon's curse mid-sentence. Isaac coldly declared death to anyone who dared to step forward. Isaac's blade swung, vowing to finish off his enemies before they could even feel the pain. The remaining enemies panicked and scrambled to flee the scene. Nirs watched the others run away in horror, unable to hide his own anxiety. As the dungeon door swung wide open, Isaac wondered if they had already escaped. Nirs asked if they should pursue them, but Isaac immediately dismissed the idea, prioritizing a search of the area instead. Nirs couldn't help but wonder if this cult was really worth someone being so blindly obsessed. Isaac stepped closer and calmly asked the subdeacon if she could still stand. The subdeacon trembled, calling Isaac by an intimate name mixed with terror. Isaac asked for her location in a stern voice, causing the subdeacon to panic and beg him not to attack her. Nirs sighed, wondering just how delusional the subdeacon had become. The subdeacon continued to beg Isaac to spare her life. Isaac leaned down, his sharp gaze demanding the subdeacon's home address. As it turned out, it was a dilapidated house located in the slums in the south of Burn City. Isaac's group was stunned by the sight before their eyes. A hoard of gold and treasure was piled high, leaving everyone shocked as to its origin. Isaac couldn't believe that a hideout filled with corpses was concealing a massive fortune in the attic. Isaac carefully inspected the coin, wondering if they truly belonged to the royal family.
Isaac nodded with certainty. All his suspicions were gradually being clarified. Royal seal on the coin said it all. Isaac called out to ask if anyone was there. Isaac decisively stepped into the dark room. Isaac inquired if the sister was feeling all right. Isaac was stunned when he saw the person standing before him. It was a member of the old church. The church member's eyes showed extreme panic while facing the dire situation. A questioning voice rang out, filled with doubt as to whether that evil ritual had truly succeeded as expected. The subdeacon sat on the bed with a worried look while the church member broke into a cold sweat out of fear. The church member trembled and begged, recounting how the demons had trampled the altar and slaughtered the believers, pleading for the subdeacon to grant a miracle. Faced with the chaotic pleas, the subdeacon grew suspicious and demanded the church member explain exactly which demons he was referring to. The subdeacon gasped in panic, crying out that her husband was beating her to death and begging for help. Sobs echoed through the space. The subdeacon's desperate cries for help made the situation even more tense. The subdeacon huddled on the bed, her incessant sobbing leaving the church member standing there in helplessness. The church member sighed in frustration, as it seemed the subdeacon was once again putting on a show to cover up some dark scheme. Darkness shrouded the attic, where dirty secrets were gradually being exposed. The church member coldly announced that an intruder was hiding in the attic, his hand erupting with a threatening holy flame. Church member views the subdeacon as nothing more than a disposable pawn, ready to discard her the moment their secrets are compromised. The holy flame in the church member's hand erupts violently. He is determined to incinerate everything to erase every trace of his crimes. Isaac emerges from the shadows, his sharp cold gaze piercing straight through the church member's soul. Before the church member can react, Isaac closes the distance, holding a sharp blade to his throat and ordering him to stay silent. Panic-stricken, the church member demands to know Isaac's identity, desperately trying to use the church's reputation to intimidate him. Isaac steps calmly out of the shadows, his sudden appearance leaving the church member stunned as he realizes who his enemy is. Isaac delivers a mocking greeting, sending shivers of terror down the church member's spine as he finally recognizes him. Isaac smiles with utter confidence, inquiring about the church member's situation while the sheer pressure he radiates leaves the man gasping for air. Silent church setting where dark conspiracies have finally been dragged into the light. Gerda is bound tightly to a chair. His tragic predicament is a testament to the church's ruthlessness. In a state of panic, the church member begins to confess the church's plot to expand its influence by manufacturing villains. The church member reveals that the bishop ordered them to find an evil person to consolidate power, leading to these horrific crimes. Church member admits to single-handedly creating a new cult, exploiting the poor to perform dark rituals. The truth about the wicked cult slowly comes to light, leaving the church member with no room to deny his actions. Isaac exclaims with utter disdain, calling this the most pathetic confession he has ever heard. Isaac stares down at the church member, his icy demeanor turning the atmosphere heavy with tension. Isaac gazes ahead with a resolute look, preparing for his next moves. Isaac announces his plan to bring the subdeacon to the church tomorrow to settle everything once and for all. The church member stubbornly threatens him, asserting that even if this plan fails, the church will still punish Gerda. The church member screams in desperation, stubbornly insisting that he is the one pulling the strings behind every plan. Isaac coldly looks down at the captive church member, nonchalantly retorting that if the church wants to collect their dues, they are welcome to come and find him. Isaac stands firm with a sharp gaze, his calm composure standing in stark contrast to the church member's madness. The church member trembles within his bindings, his face etched with absolute fear. Darkness envelopes the gloomy dungeon. Flickering candlelight illuminates the old wooden table, casting long shadows against the cold stone walls. Rapid footsteps echo through the silence as the church member struggles in vain against his restraints. The church member grinds his teeth, wondering what went wrong. Everything he built vanished overnight at Isaac's hands. Isaac watches silently, his silhouette stretching long in the dim light. The bindings tighten around his body, forcing the church member to groan in agony. The church member sneers, hurling insults at Isaac, calling him a barbarian. The church member continues to threaten that Isaac will surely face divine judgment for his sins. The church member remains defiant, convinced that his superiors will punish Gerda and heretics like Isaac alike. Fanaticism causes the blood vessels in the church member's eyes to burst, turning them bloodshot. Suddenly, a strike lands, leaving the church member stunned. The church member collapses in pain as a mysterious shadow draws near. A stranger, cloaked in a black robe, silently watches the church member at his feet. The slow, deliberate footsteps of the stranger echo in the quiet space. The dungeon door swings open, and Isaac enters holding a lamp, its brilliant light clashing with the stranger's shadows. The stranger speaks, dripping with irony as he mentions how long it has been since he last saw Isaac. Isaac holds the lamp high, his eyes gleaming with sharp, unwavering confidence. Isaac uttered the powerful name, confirming that the person standing before him was none other than Bishop Livonius.
Night falls and everything lies still under the faint, shimmering starlight.
Steady footsteps echo through the silence, shattering the stillness of the dark night.
A group of people quietly advances toward the ancient church where flickering flames await. Perched on a high branch, Kimwe and his team observe from the shadows, realizing these are the old church's men sent to eliminate the witnesses. The older one can't help but be shaken. All of Isaac's previous warnings have turned out to be true. Kimwe falls into deep thought. The name of the old church stirs up many unpleasant memories. Kimwe bitterly recalls the incident involving the misappropriation of funds from Nears, a psychological burden he cannot escape. They weren't entirely blind, they simply chose to turn a blind eye to the wrongdoings. Kimwe silently admits that everyone knew it was dirty money, but greed and selfishness had clouded their judgment. Kimwe's comrade warns him to be careful, lest they meet a tragic end like Fickle.
A question pierces his soul. Does Kimwe have the courage to protect his family from this storm?
Silence envelopes them, leaving only the sound of heavy breathing.
Kimwe clenches his fist, uttering a resolute declaration. Kimwe's gaze turns ice cold. There is no turning back now. The objective is clear. They must take down 13 enemies to clear the path for Isaac. Kimwe and his men draw their weapons, ready for a purge. With every step they take, their blades gleam, reflecting the cold moonlight. At the scene, a blood-stained grimoire rests on a magic circle as a defiant challenge rings out. Gerda smiles. Isaac's arrival does not surprise him at all. Instead, it is met with heavy sarcasm. Isaac's eyes flash as a surprise attack is activated.
Terrifying power erupts, causing the surrounding space to tremble violently. A wooden stake is sent flying, embedding itself deep into the cracked stone wall. Gerda is astonished to realize that Isaac used the phase shift technique on the stake, a power far beyond his expectations. Gerda remains unperturbed, maintaining a chilling composure while holding the grimoire in his hand. Isaac faces Gerda, unable to hide his surprise at seeing him in the flesh.
Gerda sneers, his sharp gaze responding with mockery.
Gerda feigns sorrow over the death of Silvio, who had so easily fallen onto the path of evil. Even so, Gerda does not forget to sarcastically remark that at least Silvio knew how to repay a debt. Gerda waves his hand, and the grimoire radiates a dark energy as he screams that Isaac has brought the seeds of sin to this place. An invisible force from Gerda's attack strikes, causing the stone wall to shatter, while Isaac stands there, lantern in hand, observing calmly.
Isaac's eyes are cold, his deep blue pupils gleaming with sharpness, completely unfazed by Gerda's recent attack.
Isaac launches a counterattack. A blinding beam of light shoots straight at Gerda, forcing him to retreat in astonishment. The powerful impact leaves debris raining down and a wooden piece embedded in the ground, yet Isaac holds his ground. Gerda's face pales, cold sweat running down his forehead. He cannot believe what he has just witnessed. An icy aura radiates from Isaac's hand as magical snowflakes begin to crystallize, and he asks a profound question. Isaac sarcastically adds that if the use of ice magic surprises Gerda, then perhaps he himself has already sold his soul to the devil. Gerda clutches his chest, his expression one of pain and annoyance at the overwhelming power Isaac has just displayed. Gerda narrows his eyes, demanding to know if Isaac still remembers what happened in the past.
Memories come flooding back, the image of Isaac as a newborn, innocent and unblemished.
Gerda recalls the moment he personally performed the baptism for Isaac, an event that seems deeply ironic in his eyes. Gerda hesitates, his face visibly twisted in disdain as he recalls the bitter emotions from that day. Gerda bluntly declares that he has felt nothing but disgust for the blood flowing through Isaac's veins ever since the boy was born. Isaac responds calmly, asking Gerda if he is trying to take a trip down memory lane. Gerda steps forward, gritting his teeth as he asserts that if Isaac knows his own history, he should understand that the problem lies within his very own bloodline. Gerda begins to rant about how the heretics at the border were nothing more than savages, thieves, and troublemakers. Gerda speaks with contempt about how he had married one of those savages and given birth to Isaac. Gerda continues his venomous tirade, calling it an unholy union that defied the will of the gods. Gerda shakes his head in weary annoyance, his expression filled with hypocrisy and judgment regarding Isaac's very existence. Gerda concludes that it is only natural and deserved for Isaac to be burdened by a curse. Gerda stares directly at Isaac, cursing him by saying he should never have been born into this world at all. Isaac is not angered, he simply observes gently that Gerda is speaking far too cruelly, especially for a bishop. Gerda smirks, asking Isaac if he is even aware of this fact. Gerda picks up a wooden stake, mocking that such things are often used in the sacrificial rituals of those barbaric heretics. Gerda declares that today, Isaac will die by the hands of those very heretics to cleanse this land of its impurity. The wooden stake flies through the air, tearing through the night at a terrifying speed. Isaac reacts instantly, waving his hand to manipulate magic and deflect a lethal attack from Gerda. Magic erupts. Isaac launches a counterattack, determined not to let Gerda's cowardly plot succeed. Isaac unleashes lightning-fast strikes, shattering the projectiles hurtling toward him. Gerda is stunned to realize that Isaac isn't just using ice but is accurately sniping the flying stakes. Isaac's reflexes are razor-sharp, using his wooden sword to swat away the dangerous incoming attacks.
Despite blocking the blows, the immense pressure leaves Isaac struggling to hold his ground.
Isaac gasps for air and asks to stop the training session because he has reached his limit. Gerda looks at Isaac with surprise, reminding him that the session has only been going on for an hour. Gerda smiles, acknowledging that Isaac's swordsmanship has improved significantly.
In the past, Isaac couldn't even defend against a single move from Gerda.
But now, Isaac has managed to block attacks up to 5 times. Gerda wonders why Isaac didn't choose to become a knight instead of staying by his side all this time.
Gerda affirms that what is truly astonishing is Isaac's power of imagination. A wave of power sweeps through, shattering the space all around them.
Isaac focuses intently, his magic erupting right in his hands. Isaac wonders why, at this very moment, he remembers the words of that person. Although he didn't fully grasp it before, Isaac now deeply understands the meaning behind those words.
Being imprisoned in a small room forced Isaac to pay the price with his imagination.
Isaac has practiced countless times, simulating spells he has never used in visualizing a distant future. It is these experiences within the world of imagination that have shaped the Isaac of today.
Isaac unleashes his move, a brilliant stream of power radiating outward.
Isaac's powerful attack strikes its target directly, creating a massive shockwave.
Isaac silently gives thanks for having such a wonderful mentor like Gerda. Isaac's strike forces Gerda to stagger back.
Isaac coldly questions Gerda if this is truly the end. Isaac mocks Gerda, expressing his disdain that a bishop like him has to rely on a grimoire just to fire a few wooden stakes. Gerda grinds his teeth, his face showing clear signs of tension. To avoid leaving any distinct traces, Gerda had intentionally refrained from using his true power, but now he has no other choice.
Gerda clenches his fists, preparing to unleash his true technique.
Isaac stands his ground, ready to face the terrifying power about to descend from Gerda. With a steady gaze, Isaac asserts that the power he wields is a privilege granted solely to him. Instantly, blue flames erupt violently as Gerda screams, activating his ultimate technique, the Holy Fire. Isaac is stunned by the sheer power of the fire engulfing the space, exclaiming in astonishment at the appearance of the Holy Fire.
Gerda laughs triumphantly, declaring this to be the purging flame that ordinary mages could never hope to replicate.
Gerda confidently declares that Isaac's ice crystals will vanish in an instant, but just then, Isaac calmly retorts with a challenging question. Isaac gently summons a blue flame in the palm of his hand, leaving Gerda speechless and dumbfounded at the sight before him. Facing the arrogant boss, Isaac coldly demands an explanation for the eerie blue flames burning in his hand. Isaac nonchalantly replies that it's extremely simple, just create a flame and compress it twice, triggering the boss's fury as he feels mocked. Isaac offers a cryptic smile, admitting that the power of the old church is obsolete while he is merely a heretic wielding a different kind of strength. With just a flick of his hand, Isaac activates parallel magic, a power far beyond anything the boss has ever known. The boss is utterly shocked, his face turning pale as he realizes the overwhelming might of the blue flame right before his eyes. Skepticism is written all over the boss's face, he cannot believe that someone like Isaac possesses this forbidden power. Isaac coldly dismisses the boss's contempt, asserting that the gods simply favor him far more than those who claim to represent justice. Isaac's claim strikes the boss's pride like a dagger, making him tremble with rage. Screaming in madness, the boss deems it a horrific blasphemy and pours all his remaining power into a final attack. The boss bellows about his decades of cultivation, unleashing a brilliant surge of blue energy in an attempt to crush Isaac. The boss's magic surges forward, but Isaac receives it with calm indifference, his demeanor cold and unwavering. Isaac's blue eyes flare with light, his terrifyingly calm composure seems to freeze the air around them. With a gentle gesture, Isaac completely shatters the boss's resistance, turning his attack into nothingness. The boss shrieks in despair as he realizes his power has been completely suppressed. Looking the boss straight in the eye, Isaac speaks with an icy, death sentence tone. He is going to show him exactly why he must die. The boss's eyes roll back, and absolute terror consumes his mind as he faces Isaac's verdict. Isaac unleashes the finishing blow, a fierce eruption of purple flames that wipes away every trace of the boss as Isaac refuses to let the truth about his magic be exposed. The purple light fades, leaving only a heavy silence over the battlefield where the fight just ended. A residual burst of energy sweeps across the area, leaving behind the shattered remnants of the bloody battle. Isaac stumbles back, his body exhausted after expending such a massive amount of mana to finish off the boss. Clutching his aching chest, Isaac admits that maintaining magic at this level for too long remains a heavy burden for him. Just then, Kyle appears, softly calling out to Isaac with clear concern etched on his usually composed face. Kyle supports the exhausted Isaac, and the two quickly flee the massacre site before anyone else discovers them. Kyle glances back, his gaze sharp and vigilant, determined to scrub away any evidence of the recent battle. At the scene, only pools of blood in the ruins of the boss remain, a tragic end for an ambitious man. Isaac reminds Kyle to keep a magic secret as Kyle has never signed any binding contract with him. Everything is staged as an internal dispute, leading the two sides to annihilate one another. Kyle looks at Isaac, understanding that every step Isaac takes is meticulously calculated to protect this vital secret.
Isaac coldly questions whether the boss really wants to stop here. Boss calmly confirms that all the paladins have been dealt with cleanly. Isaac stays silent, his shark gaze never leaving the boss.
Kyle speaks up, asking about Randolph's whereabouts, a flash of worry crossing his calm features.
Kyle clenches his fist, tension fills the air.
At the funeral, white flowers lie silently on the cold coffin lid.
Gerda stands there, his face solemn amidst the mourning atmosphere. Alicia and the children cannot hold back their tears, their choked sobs ringing out as they call for their departed father. Amidst the sorrowful scene, the question of the cause of Randolph's death remains unanswered.
Kyle looks at Isaac, emphasizing that they should at least let Randolph's family know the truth, as paladins are meant to be powerful.
Kyle insists that Randolph should have been able to survive.
Isaac falls into deep thought, questioning whether he had truly done everything in his power.
Kyle did not hesitate to press the issue, forcing Isaac to confess his true motives.
Isaac accepted the truth. He would continue to conceal his identity until his vengeance was fulfilled. Isaac looked Kyle straight in the eye and issued a preemptive warning. Isaac affirmed that if Kyle were ever in the same situation, he would make the exact same ruthless choice.
Kyle was taken aback, wondering if Isaac would truly go that far, even with him as an accomplice in this vendetta.
Isaac nodded firmly. The day he revealed himself would be the day everything came to an end. A short, definitive agreement was uttered, bringing their tense conversation to a close. They both looked ahead, fully aware of their respective positions. They did not have the luxury of staying until the end of the funeral, such was the fate of those burdened with great responsibilities. All negotiations with the Vatican had finally been concluded. Isaac and Gerda sat opposite each other in the carriage. The deal was done. The church would no longer collect taxes nor appoint new bishops. Isaac wasn't sure how long the promise would hold, but for now, Gerda was free from the old church's influence. Gerda nodded in agreement. Everything had unfolded exactly as Isaac had planned. Isaac promised to reward Gerda handsomely once Carlson was present, but now it was time to move on to other matters. Gerda bowed his head, his expression filled with deep contemplation. Gerda clenched his fists, confessing that he had been completely oblivious to everything before.
Gerda was horrified to learn of the evil cult's brutal rituals and the truth behind what the bishop had done.
Isaac sat in silence, his eyes harboring countless unspoken things, secrets he had inadvertently forgotten. Gerda hugged Isaac tightly, his voice trembling with worry for the boy who had once endured the torment of that unique constitution. Gerda lowered his head, lost in thought at Isaac's sudden transformation. Old memories flooded back, stirring a deep sense of sorrow within him. Isaac's gaze was distant, as if he were trying to read the thoughts hidden behind Gerda's expression. The carriage jolted over the uneven road, much like the fragmented memories slowly reconnecting within Isaac's mind. In the confined space of the carriage, Gerda faced Isaac, the atmosphere thick with weight and nostalgia. Gerda looked straight at Isaac, deciding to break the silence with a confession from the bottom of his heart. Isaac listened patiently, his bright blue eyes intently following every expression on Gerda's aged face. Gerda called out Isaac's name, his deep, gravelly voice echoing in the stillness of the carriage. Gerda spoke of his marriage to Adele, an old chapter of his life he had never wanted to revisit. Gerda reminisced about his wife's wild nature, a woman who carried a culture completely different from his own. Gerda confessed that those were hellish times, when both of them were merely pawns used to prevent a war between two families.
Though bound by self-interest, Gerda and Adele eventually found common ground, a promise made in desperation.
Gerda knelt, gripping Adele's hand, as they swore an oath to protect their children from being used as tools for the clan. Gerda looked into the distance, pondering the meaning of the life he had always been searching for. Gerda reaffirmed that old promise, determined to let the children live lives of their own. The emotional handholding between Gerda and Adele stood as a testament to their love and silent sacrifice. Gerda sighed, intending to keep this story a secret until Isaac was older. But Gerda realized Isaac had grown much faster than he expected, forcing him to share the truth now. Gerda observed Isaac, noticing the questions clearly etched on the young man's face. Gerda gently placed a hand on Isaac's head, a gesture filled with love and understanding. Gerda wanted to tell Isaac that even if the world out there was harsh, he still had the right to be himself. Isaac looked up at Gerda, his eyes moved by the sincerity and affection he held for him. Isaac stood frozen, Gerda's words striking a deep chord within his soul. A fleeting moment of tenderness crossed Isaac's face as understanding began to take hold. Isaac replied to Gerda softly, a quiet agreement, yet heavy with significance. In the darkness of the forest, the hurried footsteps of a stranger broke the silence. The subordinate rushed toward the boss, clutching a letter from Gerda, the air thick with tension. The boss coldly issued an order, demanding the letter from the subordinate's hand at once. In the dead of night, the boss casually tossed something into the blazing campfire. Without a hint of hesitation, the boss spoke with disdain, dismissing the object being consumed by the flames as nothing more than a worthless scrap of paper. The boss's face remained shrouded in shadow, with only the firelight reflecting in his sharp cold eyes. He gritted out his words, expressing utter contempt for the messages being sent repeatedly. The boss firmly asserted that regardless of who stood behind these letters, they would never ever be qualified to become the true master of this land. Under the quiet night sky, everything began to sink into an eerie silence following the boss's ambitious declaration. Schiller summons Isaac and Carlson to his office, formally acknowledging their contributions and hard work over the past period. Schiller turns his gaze toward Carlson, directly asking about his personal wishes after completing the mission.
Without a moment's hesitation, Carlson expresses his sole desire to continue serving under Isaac.
Schiller offers him a promotion to company commander if he returns to Winterband, but Carlson firmly insists on staying where he can best utilize his skills. Schiller falls deep into thought, his fingers rhythmically tapping against the wooden desk. After a moment of consideration, Schiller approves Carlson's request and Isaac reaffirms his peace of mind having Carlson as his personal guard. Schiller officially appoints Carlson as Isaac's bodyguard, accompanied by a reward of 200 denarian. Carlson bows respectfully, accepting the appointment and the reward from Schiller. It is then Isaac's turn, and Schiller asks him to state his own desire. Isaac remains silent for a moment, his eyes revealing a clear sense of determination. Isaac bluntly demands ownership of the Fickle region, leaving Schiller visibly stunned. Schiller clarifies with Isaac about the Winfield region, and the atmosphere in the room grows tense. At the training grounds, Isaac and Carlson begin a practice match with wooden swords. The two wooden swords clash violently, their sharp, dry sound echoing throughout the training yard. Isaac grits his teeth, struggling to parry the overwhelming assault from Carlson. Even after giving his all, Isaac cannot avoid staggering under the sheer force of Carlson's power. Carlson remarks that while Isaac has a solid defense, he lacks the physical strength to withstand a direct frontal blow. Isaac gasps for air, struggling to regulate his breathing after the relentless barrage of attacks. Carlson looks directly at Isaac, questioning the real reason behind his sudden request for a sparring match. Isaac braces himself into a combat stance, replying with a firm voice about his goal of seizing Winfield. Carlson's strike slams hard into the ground, creating a tremor that kicks up a cloud of dust. Carlson continues to probe about Isaac's plans after obtaining Winfield, but Isaac chooses to keep it a secret. Isaac tersely replies that all Carlson needs to know is that this goal will serve his revenge. The atmosphere at the training ground turns volatile as Isaac and Carlson get back into fighting stances. The next collision happens at breakneck speed, with Isaac putting everything he has into his sword-wielding hands. A sharp metallic-like crack resonates as the pressure from the strike causes the training floor to crack. Debris flies everywhere, and a thick haze of dust obscures their vision. Isaac reveals a murderous intent, launching a fierce counterattack toward Carlson. Isaac grips his wooden sword tighter, his eyes filled with resolve as he declares the start of the next round. Carlson cannot help but be amazed. Isaac's swordsmanship technique is incredibly fluid, a complete contradiction to the rumors he had heard. Although Isaac's moves lack terrifying sharpness or speed, every movement exudes an extraordinary level of composure. Carlson realizes the absolute precision in each of Isaac's offensive and defensive maneuvers, a level that should only come after years of grueling training. However, Isaac's stamina is his fatal weakness, quickly pushing him to the point of exhaustion. Isaac stumbles backward, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he faces the overwhelming presence of Carlson. Carlson cannot believe his eyes. Despite the massive physical disparity, Isaac remains standing. Carlson's eyes harden, focusing intently on every minor opening in Isaac's defense. The two lunge at each other again, their wooden swords colliding and creating sharp sounds in the silent air. Isaac is stunned as his momentary lapse in concentration is immediately capitalized upon by Carlson. Carlson unleashes a powerful strike, forcing Isaac to use every ounce of his remaining strength to defend. The two wooden swords lock together, and the tension reaches a breaking point. Isaac struggled to hold his ground, a painful groan escaping his lips as the pressure mounted. Suddenly, Carlson twisted his wrist, instantly stripping the advantage away from Isaac. Losing his balance, Isaac's body swayed under the force of Carlson's counterattack. A swift, ruthless strike landed, leaving Isaac with absolutely no room to retaliate. Capitalizing on the opening, Carlson delivered a lightning-fast kick that caught Isaac completely off guard. The blow connected squarely, sending Isaac reeling far beyond his control. Isaac collapsed in agony, his breath coming in ragged gasps following Carlson's brutal assault. Carlson looked down coldly, declaring that with skills like these, Isaac was still far too green. Despite the pain, Isaac forced himself back up, desperately pleading with Carlson to teach him. Carlson's gaze grew deep and inscrutable as he questioned Isaac directly about his ability to use magic. Isaac sat slumped on the ground, facing Carlson in the heavy silence. Isaac brought up the battle between the acolyte and the bishop, casting doubt on Carlson's true strength. Carlson replied coldly, stating that at a certain level anyone can discern the skill of their opponent. Isaac questioned him skeptically, asking if Carlson had truly reached that level himself. Maintaining a calm demeanor, Isaac waited for Carlson's response. Isaac confronted Carlson, asking if he had known everything ever since he wiped out the Holy Knights. There wasn't a soul in sight. The surroundings fell into a hollow silence, as if shielding their secrets. Carlson admitted that while magic would make things easier, it had forced Goethe into political isolation.
Isaac was stunned to hear about a 10th-tier mage from history.
He wondered if his own unique constitution truly mirrored that legendary figure.
Amidst the roaring flames, someone asserted that Goethe was the only 10th-tier mage in human history.
To suppress the magical explosions, Goethe had to collect countless artifacts across the continent, wearing them to push past the limits of his own body.
Isaac fell into deep thought. What about him?
Carlson stood there, observing Isaac with the solemn look of a mentor evaluating his potential.
Carlson affirmed that the fact Isaac could use magic was ironclad proof that he had overcome his own grueling constitution.
Isaac nodded slightly, beginning to understand the parallel between himself and the Goethe of the past. It had been over a century since Goethe raised the capital, and now, one with the same constitution was reborn within the Goethe family. Carlson warned Isaac that the royals and nobles would never leave him be. They would either use him as a political pawn or attempt to assassinate him. Isaac gripped his wooden sword tightly, facing the harsh reality of his own future. Isaac admitted that he had no regrets about his choices. Carlson retorted sarcastically that the one who would end up regretting it was Isaac, since he was the one who asked for the sparring match. Before Isaac could react, Carlson launched a lightning-fast attack. Isaac panicked, thinking the match was already supposed to be over. A month later, Isaac's carriage departed without a single word of farewell, leaving those behind in distress. Inside the carriage, Schiller questioned Isaac about leaving so quietly, noting how much it would hurt those who stayed. Schiller asserted that it was precisely because Isaac cared for them that he chose to leave in such a way. Isaac went silent, offering no response to Schiller's words.
Isaac's gaze drifted far out the window, reminiscing about the terrifying power he once possessed.
Isaac clutched his chest, the obsession with his own fragility still lingered. For Isaac, letting his loved ones suffer the pain of departure was still better than having to witness their deaths. You would rather choose death than let any terrible fate befall them. Isaac urged his horse forward into the chilling mist. Winfield, once the estate of Fickle, now stood as nothing more than desolate ruins. It was a land tainted by the blood of monsters, where no life could ever hope to sprout. Isaac realized that this place was the front line against the enemies coming from beyond Winterband, identical to the final scene he witnessed in his previous life. Suddenly, a thunderous noise erupted, shaking the entire carriage violently. A scream pierced the air as a monster's horn tore through the carriage, posing a direct threat to Isaac's life. Shocked, Isaac caught sight of the newcomer and hurriedly shouted a warning, ordering Carlson to stay inside and not step out. The unexpected arrival of Carlson left Isaac bewildered, wondering why he was in such a dangerous place.
Isaac immediately called out Carlson's name.
Before his eyes, Carlson stood in a combat-ready stance, weapon gripped tightly, his expression filled with intense tension amidst the precarious situation.